Good morning to everyone, and we now call the September Board of Regents meeting to order. Today we'll begin with the introduction of two new deans and the most recently named Regents professor. President Kaler and Provost Hanson, would you join me at the podium, please?
Chair Johnson, members of the board, I'm very pleased to introduce two new deans today. First, the new dean of the College of Science and Engineering, Dr. Samuel B. Mukasa. Dean Mukasa is an accomplished scientist and academic leader who comes to the University of Minnesota from the University of New Hampshire, where he's been Dean of the College of Engineering and Physical Sciences and Eric J. Esseen Professor of Geochemistry. Previously, he spent 21 years on the faculty of the University of Michigan, where he was chair of the Department of Geological Sciences from 2007 to 2010. At New Hampshire, Dean Mukasa led the development of a strategic plan for the college, initiated new undergraduate degree programs, and oversaw faculty cluster hiring initiatives that enhanced interdisciplinary scholarship. He also led successful fundraising efforts, securing $17 million in the past 3 years alone for student scholarships, and raising an additional $8 million for new facilities that support entrepreneurship, campus industry partnerships, and experiential learning opportunities for students. Dean Mukasa was part of the team that helped to launch the new School of Marine Science and Ocean Engineering at New Hampshire. A longtime champion of diversity in STEM fields, he's implemented K-12 pipeline and mentorship programs and a successful program to bring women and people of color into faculty and academic leadership positions. Dean Mukasa, who received his PhD in geochemistry from the University of California, Santa Barbara, is highly regarded for his research in geochemistry, geochronology, and petrology. His work on the origin and evolution of rocks in the Bering Sea and Arctic Ocean regions has helped to shed new light on the evolution of continents and has relevance to issues of climate change. We're confident that he will advance the quality, reputation, and impact of the College of Science and Engineering, and I'm delighted to welcome him to the University of Minnesota. So, would you say a few words?
Thank you very much, Karen, for that very generous introduction. I was told that I have only about 30 seconds, so I didn't really prepare a speech, other than to say I'm absolutely delighted to be here. I think this is my third or fourth day on the job, and I've made the rounds. I've visited a few centers and departments in my college, and I'm absolutely thrilled to see what's around, and look forward to playing a part in elevating our game and becoming a lot more visible. So thank you very much.
Next, please welcome the new Dean of the Law School, Gary Jenkins. Dean Jenkins brings to the law school extensive experience as an administrator at a public law school, a scholar of law and philanthropy, and a foundation executive. He was most recently Associate Dean for Academic Affairs and the John C. Elam Voris Sater Professor of Law at The Ohio State University, Moritz College of Law, where he had primary oversight of academic programs and policy, curriculum, communications, and other key areas. And he's collaborated to help shape and implement a strategic plan, advance fundraising, and support diversity and inclusion. An energetic, creative, and collaborative leader and a consensus builder, Dean Jenkins worked as part of an entrepreneurial team to advance the OSU Law School in the increasingly challenging environment for law schools and public higher education. He also led the law school's efforts to implement significant curricular reforms and innovations, develop new co-curricular programs, and revitalize branding. Prior to joining the Ohio State faculty in 2004, he was General Counsel and Chief Operating Officer of the Goldman Sachs Foundation, responsible for domestic and international grant-making programs, communications, finance, legal affairs, and investment management for one of the country's largest corporate foundations. Dean Jenkins earned his JD from Harvard University Law School, where he was editor-in-chief of the Harvard Civil Rights, Civil Liberties Law Review, and he went on to clerk for Judge Timothy Lewis on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit. He also earned an MPP from the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University, and his BA is in political science from Haverford College. This breadth of experience, strategic acumen, and collaborative leadership style will position the law school well for the future. So please join me in welcoming him to the University of Minnesota.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you to the Regents. Thank you so much to President Kaler and Provost Hanson. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm very excited to stay in the Big Ten family. And, but I have to say, I've been here about a month, a little over a month, and I've just been so amazed by the warmth and the support and the excitement around the law school from our faculty, our staff, our students, and our alumni. It is truly an honor to be here, so I look forward to looking for new opportunities to serve our students, to advance scholarship, and to support the law school community. So thank you very much. I want to steal your line.
Oh. I miss.
Oh, I see. No, it's okay. That's right. I was going to say, yeah, that's right. Look at where you, look how far up your force from what you used to crank out. Thank you. Yeah, I'm a little slow. I'm not catching up.
Mr. Chair and members of the board, it's my pleasure and honor to recognize our newest Regents Professor, Christopher Ugen. Established in 1965 by the Board of Regents to recognize the national and international prominence of faculty members, the Regents Professorship is the highest honor the University of Minnesota bestows upon its faculty members. It recognizes faculty members who have made unique contributions to the quality of the University of Minnesota through exceptional accomplishments in teaching, research, and scholarship or creative work, and contributions to the public good. With Professor Ugen's selection, there is now a full complement of 30 Regents professors, and in the history of the program, amongst the thousands and thousands of scholars who have taught and created new knowledge at our university, only 100 have been named Regents professors. It is truly a rare honor and one that Professor Ugen is most deserving. Christopher Ugen, Distinguished McKnight Professor and Martindale Chair, Department of Sociology, College of Liberal Arts, is a pioneer in the study of incarceration and crime. He ranks among the nation's most cited and productive criminologists and is perhaps best known for his scholarship on felon disenfranchisement in the United States. That is the practice of denying voting rights to citizens with criminal records even after they have served their sentences. Moreover, Chris and a colleague were the first to document the astonishing fact that 5 million American citizens were denied the right to vote, and they found felony disenfranchisement affects, in several states, 1 in 4 African American men. Since he began writing on felon disenfranchisement in 1998, 24 states have moved to re-enfranchise more than 1 million voters. And his research on the effects of low-level arrest records on employment employability galvanized the state of Minnesota to ban the box identifying felons on job applications. He is a prolific publisher of his research on topics ranging from sexual harassment to deportation, and is widely quoted and profiled in the popular media. Perhaps most importantly, Chris is described as an amazing teacher and mentor, known for building undergraduates into his research teams and publications. Add to all of that remarkable work his leadership and service at the University of Minnesota. As co-chair of the university's strategic plan Rejecting Complacency issue team, he played a key leadership role in shaping the university's future direction. He was recommended by his colleagues and served as the only faculty representatives on the Board of Regents Athletics Oversight Committee. He has served as vice chair of the Faculty and Senate Consultative Committee and chaired the CLA Council of Chairs. He has had other numerous leadership positions, including serving 6 years as the Department of Sociology chair. Ladies and gentlemen, you are looking at the quintessential Regents professor. Chris, congratulations and thank you for the impact of your scholarship and teaching and for all you do for the University of Minnesota. And I'm pleased to award you big medal. There you go. Congratulations.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you, President Kaler. I will only say a simple thank you. I'm just overwhelmed with gratitude. I can tell you all that there is no better place. There's no better place for a faculty member to do research than at the University of Minnesota. We have leadership with integrity. We have amazing students. We have support staff that are second to none. And the colleagues that I have, including my partner Doug Cartman, who's back there, are second to none as well. So thank you very much.
Maybe that's what the camera's for. Again, our congratulations to our two new deans and Professor Ugen for your recipient of the Regents Professor Award. Thank you very much. I would seek a motion and a second for the approval of the minutes.
Second.
Been moved and second. Is there discussion? Discussion, approval of minutes. If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. President Kaler, we look forward to your report to the Board of Regents.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. Excuse me. Members of the board, 165 years ago, first as a prep school, what is now the University of Minnesota opened its doors. And this month, more than 60,000 students from across the state and around the world walked through those doors once more, bringing with them big hopes, countless dreams, and fantastic energy. I know many of you joined me last week at the convocation for the incoming class of 2020 on our Twin Cities campus. And if you didn't feel that energy then, and if you didn't get revved up for all we have to do in the coming year, then frankly, nothing will. And for those of you who believe members of our Board of Regents never have fun, let me show you something. and Regent Shue and Divine win the contest for eyewear. Meanwhile, a diversity of students return to our Crookston, Duluth, Morris, and Rochester campuses as well. As the 2016-17 academic year begins, this will be a year we place special attention on the unique nature of our university system. Wednesday, the system chancellors and I met with the admissions and enrollment management leaders of all of our campuses for a candid and productive work session to get our arms around ways to work better together to ensure more enrollment cooperation. One of our shared priorities this year, the board and me, is to develop a system-wide strategic plan, and our enrollment management summit is part of that work. Of course, I will be making visits to every system campus this year, and we're looking forward to having a new chancellor in place for the University of Minnesota Morris by the end of the year. We all know that ours is a different kind of system from those in other states. Our campuses have truly distinct attributes, strengths, and an independence of spirit. By the way, this year marks the 50th anniversary of our Crookston campus as an institution of higher education and the 20th anniversary of their offering online academic programs. And so congratulations to Chancellor Wood. I look forward to a year of fruitful conversations and discussions about the University of Minnesota system and how we serve the state. It's a priority in my 2016-17 work plan, which board staff will distribute following my comments. Besides moving closer to a new Morris Chancellor, we will soon bring candidates to campus for the new and important role of Senior Vice President for Finance and Operations. I'm thankful for all the hard work CLA Dean Coleman and Associate Vice President Klatt have put in as they co-chair the search committee. This is an appointment that will fundamentally change the way we conduct our business. And as you saw just moments ago, we have two new deans of our law school and our Twin Cities College of Engineering, exciting new leadership in two very high-profile positions. The hiring of Dr. J. Neil Henderson as the leader of our first medical discovery team, focusing on health equity, rural health access, and American Indian health issues is another important development. He'll be based in our medical school's Duluth campus, and he's a member of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma and a recognized leader on American Indian health issues. One leadership position we are soon to fill, pending approval of the entire board, is that of our new general counsel for the university, Douglas Peterson. Many of the members of the board met him Wednesday, and the announcement of his pending hire triggered notes to my office from two Minnesota Supreme Court justices congratulating us on his appointment. That's a good sign. Qualifications aside, I also feel very strongly that we simply needed one more Peterson in the university community. Right now, with Doug's arrival, there will be 369 students, faculty, and staff with that very Minnesota name. And in fact, he will be the third Douglas Peterson at the University of Minnesota. Seriously, since we last met, I have spent a good amount of time in Greater Minnesota laying the groundwork for our upcoming legislative request and deepening relationships with the agricultural community in Greater Minnesota. Once again, I had the pleasure of visiting with hundreds of ag and food industry leaders at Farm Fest, and then with many friends of the university at 3 county fairs in Dakota, McLeod, and Steele counties. There's nothing like hanging out with 4-H kids and their families and being reminded of the work that Extension performs in all 87 Minnesota counties. And whenever I'm in Greater Minnesota or at the State Fair, which I visited 3 times, I will say, I feel Minnesotans' real affection for the university and the true drive of our land-grant mission. And then there's the world stage and the accomplishments of University of Minnesota alumni and a student last month. 7 former Gopher athletes represented the United States at the 2016 Rio Summer Olympics, and 2 of them, swimmer David Plummer, a CLA English literature major, and basketball player Lindsay Whalen, a CEHD School of Kinesiology graduate, won gold medals. David also won a bronze. And one of our current students, Kelly Caitlin, a CSE biomedical engineering major, won a silver medal in cycling. They made us proud, and so did another global honor we're poised to win. We're one of 4 finalists named by the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities, or APLU, for its inaugural Institutional Award for Global Learning, Research, and Engagement. The award recognizes institutions at the leading edge of inclusive and comprehensive efforts to internationalize their campus. The winner, Ohio State, Arizona State, and UC San Diego are the other finalists, will be announced during the 2016 APLU annual meeting in November. but I am confident we will win because of our curriculum and preparing our students for the critical thinking skills necessary to address world challenges. And congratulations to Associate Vice President and Dean of International Programs, Meredith McQuaid, and her entire team for this recognition. As you know, this weekend marks the 15th anniversary of the attacks on the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and the United Airlines Flight 93. I'm sure we will all remember where we were and the horror and sadness we felt on September 11th, 2001. And later today, right outside McNamara, our entire university community will remember the victims of the attacks, and we will read the names of nearly 3,000 of them. I hope you can join me today, and on Saturday, we will also recognize survivors at the Gophers football game. Also, I'd like us to pause for a moment to honor the memory of another Olympian, but also, of course, a former governor, U.S. Senator, and Regent, Wendell Anderson. He was a member of this board for 12 years and served this university with great affection, passion, and commitment in that role and when he was our governor. He brought the sort of determination and toughness that naturally came from his days as a kid from the east side of St. Paul and the hockey rinks he so loved. We're thankful for his contributions to this university and, as the cover of Time magazine put it, to the good life of Minnesota. Since we last met, the proposed integration of UMP and Fairview has been put on a pause. And as you may recall, for 9 months we negotiated in good faith with Fairview. However, after many compromises by both parties, the university and UMP presented our best and final offer. We believe our proposal would form the basis for the academic health system to which we aspire, and that would undoubtedly strengthen the academic mission of the medical school to benefit patients, the community, and the state. The Fairview Board of Directors did not accept our proposal, and we halted negotiations. We believe we had come as far as we could without sacrificing our mission and vision. I remind you, the university's priority and vision is to provide cutting-edge, high-quality patient care. It is also to ensure that our medical school, the state's only public medical school, which graduates more than 80% of the new physicians in the state, and all of our health science schools grow and fulfill their academic and clinical missions. While negotiations with Fairview have halted, our overall goal has not changed. We know that a world-class medical school requires a world-class health system, and just as a world-class health system requires a world-class medical school. We're committed to finding a new way to get there. The AHC and UMP have started a strategic planning process that will consider a range of options going forward. In fact, an RFP for help with that process was issued this week. We've heard from several healthcare organizations since the Fairview talks ended. We are lucky to live in a state with excellent healthcare options that create many exciting possibilities for collaboration and partnership. In the meantime, we continue to work with Fairview through our existing University of Minnesota Health Partnership and Affiliation Agreement. And our medical school continues to train the next generation of physicians to research new cures and treatments and to provide high-quality health care, including to some of the most complex patients. Yesterday, the Audit and Compliance Committee received a report about our Human Participant Research Protection Implementation Plan and had a chance to interact with Dr. David Strauss, a member of the external review team that issued its report and recommendations in February of last year. Dr. Strauss offered a very positive report on how we're doing on this important priority, and Dr. Strauss said the university should be proud of the progress we've made, and I am. Finally, Mr. Chair, members of the board, as the new school year begins on all our campuses, I believe it's critical that we all are especially mindful of the local and national tensions that surround us. From Larpenteur Avenue near our St. Paul campus to the streets of Dallas and the horrors of an Orlando nightclub shooting, these and other summer tragedies remind us that we live in painful and challenging times. The despair, passion, and sorrow evoked by acts of violence and hatred in our surrounding community and across the globe can't help but seep into our campus as the school year begins. And the divisive rhetoric of our country's presidential election may unfortunately heighten tension. Some members of our community have experienced hate and violence, feel anxiety and worry about the climate on all our campuses. But this is an issue that should matter to all of us because we each play a role in ensuring an empathetic and respectful community. And as the new school year begins, I call on each of us to redouble our efforts to create a welcoming, respectful, and inclusive campus. We gather at our university from many different places, perspectives, and identities. Those differences make us better, They should not divide us. With that, Mr. Chair, I conclude my report, and I would like the board staff to distribute my work plan for the coming year.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I recognize Regent Simmons for a brief comment in regard to our academic health issue. Regent Simmons.
Thank you, Chair Johnson and colleagues. Given that the success of our medical school, its mission, is a top board priority, your work group is pleased to continue to represent the board, working with the administration to find that optimal pathway for continued success and growth. We're pleased also, former Regent John Frobenius and Regent David McMillan and I to welcome Regent Linda Cohen to our midst. She brings to our work knowledge and a keen commitment to the success of the medical school, so she will be a welcome addition. We're strongly supportive of the President's stated plan today of strategic planning to look at the best paths for the medical school to follow to ensure successful fulfillment of the threefold mission. We agree fully with the importance of having expert outside consultation to bring an additional wealth of knowledge to the deliberations that will occur, and we are fully committed, along with the President and Vice President Jackson, to continue growing the success of our relationship, our strong relationship, our affiliation with Fairview. So welcome very much the comments, the questions, the ideas this board has, members have, and to share with us so we can represent you well as we interface with the administration. Thank you, Chair Johnson.
Thank you very much, Regent Simmons, and thank you, Regent McMillan, for your work, and now Regent Cohen, as well as former Regent Frobenius, in this very important endeavor. Next, the report of the chair. First, I'd like to welcome our new and returning students to a new academic year. Classes are, of course, underway in all 5 campuses, and the energy and excitement of our students is very evident. Following our last board meeting in July, the Regents had an opportunity to step back from our day-to-day work and think about the year ahead at our annual retreat. Today, I want to share with you and remind ourselves again of the 4 priorities that we outlined for our board and its work. First, raise the national profile of the university's academic health sciences and guide strategic evolution of the medical school and its affiliated clinical practice. Secondly, establish standards for excellence in the student experience at each campus, including admissions principles, sound academic advising, meaningful opportunities for reciprocal community engagement, and learning outcomes that prepare graduates for life. Thirdly, develop a system-wide strategic plan that illuminates and embraces the 21st century land-grant mission and its impact on the people of Minnesota. And finally, examine options to further operational excellence and create a long-range plan to secure the university's financial future. These priorities are intended to assist the President and senior leadership team in advancing their work and guide the board's agenda planning and development throughout the year. We look forward as a Board of Regents, along with the administration, in making progress in these very vital and important areas. We now turn to item number 6, the receiving and filing of the reports, which are contained in your docket material. Consent report would obtain a motion and second for the consent report at this time. There's a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion in regard to the consent report? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevailed. President Kaler, I turn to you for the introduction of our athletic director, Mr. Coyle. President Kaler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. It's my pleasure to introduce for his first annual report to you about Gopher Intercollegiate Athletics, our athletics director, Mark Coyle. It is fair to say that in just 3 months on the job, Mark has hit the ground running. It may be that the ground hit him. He's already proven his steady leadership and his integrity in several high-profile decisions. We are lucky as student athletes and the Gopher staff and members of the Gopher community to have him as our athletics director. And with that, I turn the microphone over to Athletic Director Coyle.
Thank you, President Kaler, and good morning, Chair Johnson and Regents, and thank you for this opportunity to talk about the many positive things going on with our 700 student athletes over in Gopher Athletics. Some quick key facts in the athletic department. We have 25 programs. We have more than 700 women and men competing for those 25 programs. In FY17, our department budget will be $105 million. Department-wide, we have a cumulative grade point average of 3.22, and that's through the spring semester of 2016. 11 Gopher programs turned in perfect multi-year scores for the NCAA's academic progress rate. 14 programs won APR awards last season, being recognized nationally. And for the second year in a row, Minnesota led the nation's public institutions in the percentage of its programs winning APR awards. Minnesota had the nation's most academic all-district honorees last season with 27, and the second most academic All-Americans with 11. Both these were new program records. Nearly 300 of our 700 Gopher student athletes were named academic All-Big Ten last season with a 3.0 or higher grade point average. 72 of our Gophers earned Big Ten Distinguished Scholarship recognition with a 3.7 or higher grade point average last year. Minnesota won 6 Big Ten championships last season. That total was the third highest in the conference, trailing only Ohio State and Michigan. In the past decade, 18 different Gopher teams have won conference titles, more than any other school in the Big Ten. And women's hockey won its 4th national title in the past 5 seasons. The program finished 18th in the Learfield Directors' Cup, the department's first top 20 finish in the past 6 seasons. And 16 different teams competed in NCAA postseason play last season. 43 of our student athletes were named All-Americans. Additional postseason honors include national and conference level Coach of the Year and Player of the Year awards. From a compliance standpoint, we added a staff member to oversee all audits and monitoring. This was the first time we've added staff in that area in 10 years. The frequency of student athlete education increased to a monthly schedule. And moving forward, our compliance office will travel to away competitions with football, men's basketball, and women's basketball this season. And facilities overview, our annual budget and spend is between $1.3 and $1.9 million on major projects and repair and maintenance of existing facilities. This includes the Jane Sage College Stadium turf that we just replaced this summer. We also have renovations at our soccer facility, Elizabeth Lyle Robbie Stadium. And we continue to pursue major events and athletic venues, including TCF Bank Stadium. Overall facilities campaign, Nothing Short of Greatness, has raised $94 million. Construction and fundraising work continues on Athletes Village. The footings foundation work is currently taking place, and major steel and structures should begin this fall. Project remains on time and on budget. Alternatives for Athletes Village, such as alignment area addition to the new indoor practice facility, have been priced, and decisions to add is based on available contingency. The outdoor track project is moving forward. The pre-design and scoping is completed, including site options. A fundraising committee has been selected, and we begin outreach efforts after site selection. And contingency from Athletes Village will help fund the track. With respect to the financial update, I want to make sure clear, I talked yesterday with the audit committee, and in my 3 months here, we've had a chance to sit down with each head coach, with each department head, and with each department in our department. And I've made it very clear what our expectations are. That we want to manage our budgets and follow the rules and policies of this institution, and we take that very seriously. In addition, we've had mandatory training for all staff that occurred this past summer, working closely with campus as a result of the audit findings. But again, we want to develop and actively demonstrate visible commitment to transparency and inclusion. We want to implement relevant and measurable processes that exceed the expectations from the 3 internal audit reports from last year. And we want to proactively engage the Internal Audit Office with best practices to enhance current and future operational functions of the department. Our FY17 budget of $105 million ranks 7th in the Big Ten. There are 6 institutions with higher budgets. Those include Ohio State, Michigan, Wisconsin, Michigan State, Penn State, and Nebraska. We're one of 2 Big Ten schools with a smaller FY17 budget than FY16, the other being Maryland. On average, Big Ten schools are increasing athletic budgets by $6.7 million a year, over a year from FY16 to FY17. And the average budget across all 14 institutions is $108 million. Here's a snapshot of our budget. You can see 32% of our budget is made up of personnel. Sport operations represents 16%. Grant and aid is 11%. Facility operations is 8%. Special events, football guarantees, debt service make up the other costs. With respect to revenue, here's that snapshot. Our Big Ten and NCAA allocations, our ticket sales and development represent a majority of our revenue streams coming into the department. We also have our media sponsorships, which represent 10%, O&M allocation at 7%, concessions, facility rentals, apparel, licensing, parking, and special events round out those revenue streams for us. Additional financial impact. Full grant aid for Gopher student athletes in the aid year 2015 put $16.6 million back into the university and its community. Scholarships covered $9.3 million, while partial scholarships, our walk-on student athletes paid $7.3 million. As you know, most of our young men and women are on partial scholarships. In many years, Gopher Athletics draws approximately 1 million visitors to the U of M campus for athletic events. And we had a record year last year for merchandise royalties at $1.7 million. Our guiding principles. I'm in my 5th year of being an athletics director, and when I made that transition from Kentucky over to Boise State to be in that chair, I learned leadership can sometimes be a lonely position. And I thought it was important to put in a foundation of what we wanted to do as a department and how we wanted to operate. And I built on those guiding principles through my time at Boise State and then last year at Syracuse. And I've talked to our senior staff, our staff, about what I want our guiding principles to be for our department. And I try to keep it very simple and clean so we all understand and can follow. But the first one is our actions. We want to value results over promises. Integrity. We do the right thing every time. Transparency. We have a blue-collar work ethic and sound fiscal management. Humility. We are low ego, high output. And innovation. We want to take calculated risk. And what I mean by our messaging and management, I think it's critical that we're very intentional and consistent with internal and external audiences. And one of the challenges of my job in the first 3 months is I've had the opportunity to speak all over the state, and I can't wait till our actions define us. And so I use the word trust with verification. I know you trust me now, and I'm hopeful that we'll verify what we talk about and what we want to be as a department moving forward to represent this great institution. So with that, I'll open up to questions, Chair Johnson.
Thank you very much, Director Coyle. Comments, questions at this time from members of the board. Regent Lucas, please.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. I can't tell you how pleased I am with your report. It really is extraordinary. But I noticed you mentioned some of the unfunded programs that we need, and you mentioned the lineman's facility. I'm wondering about some of the Olympic sports, if we have fully funded their needs, and I think particularly of maybe gymnastics and a few of those. So could you address that, please?
Yes.
Mr. Coyle?
Yeah, Chair Johnson, Regent Lucas. my first week here, I had a chance to go to all of our facilities for all of our sports and take a look at them. And we, Athletes Village is a big piece of our puzzle, but there's no question when you look at our gymnastics facilities for our women's team and our men's team, those are areas we need to address, and we're looking at potential alternative sites for them for practice and so forth. But again, we believe in a broad-based program. We have 25 programs, 700 students, and we want to make sure if it has Minnesota written across their chest that we fund them fully and compete at the highest level.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? Regent Amari.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. Thank you, Athletic Director Coyle. Appreciate the report. I'm curious to know the pie chart of our revenue and the percentages. How would you I know you probably don't know off the top of your head all of them, but I'm just curious how our percentages in the split in the pie chart compares to some of our competitors.
Yeah.
Mr. Coyle?
Particularly those with higher budgets.
Yeah. Chair Johnson and Regent Omari, I've been around college athletics for 25 years, and we all have very similar revenue streams. Your conference and NCAA allocation is a big chunk of that, your fundraising and ticket sales. And I think we're consistent with our peers. I think when you look at Ohio State and Michigan, the size of their stadiums, obviously their ticket revenue is going to look differently than ours from a football perspective. But again, we have men's hockey, which is a revenue sport for us. So we have some built-in advantages. But again, revenue streams, whether you're talking about Minnesota, Iowa, Michigan, the streams are the same, but just the volume might be different based on the stadium.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Regent Broad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Director Coyle. I appreciate that you came to the Audit Committee yesterday. We enjoyed hearing and we're thankful to hear the progress and the updates related to the financial audit and compliance. With athletics, it's often success is not necessarily driven by that championship, but it's driven by what you did to get there and what you do when no one's watching. And I just wanted to highlight the efforts of Director Coyle and the department relative to focusing on those nuts and bolts, focusing on getting things right and doing things right. And I think that that's evidenced by the progress report that we received in the Audit Committee yesterday. And so I look forward to continuing our work with you in moving in the right direction, and thank you for your focus on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Broad. Director Coyle, I believe you have some of your staff people with today. Would you mind introducing some of them are new to our community? Would you please introduce them?
Yes, Chair Johnson. Rhonda McFarland, who is our new Deputy Athletics Director, CFO, arrived. We've worked together for 4.5 years now. Jeannie Yalen, who's our Chief of Staff, Tom McGinnis, who's a Senior Associate Athletics Director for us, and Jake Rickard is in the back. Handles media relations and communications for us. And I'm sorry if I missed anybody. I'm not sure I see anybody else.
Very good. Thank you for that. Regent Anderson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome, Mr. Coyle. I just want to say, as we were going through the slides, it's interesting for me to notice that so many times it's lost in the amount of money that the athletics department puts into the general academic portion of the school. And I just want to reiterate that was $16.6 million for tuition and things. And something I didn't really realize until today was 7.3 million of that is from our walk-on athletes, basically. I'm familiar with baseball. I know we have 28 places and 11 scholarships, so they get partial scholarships. So those young men choose to come to the University of Minnesota, get part of it paid, but contribute their own money to the tuition and dormitories. And I think $7.3 million is not an insignificant number. It's a nice number to know. Secondly, I just want to say how excited I am to see the guiding principles for the athletic department. They're very much like guiding principles that I run in my own life. And I think our athletic department will be better for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Anderson. Regent Rocha, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Director Coyle. Very happy with your work and the interactions that we've had so far. I appreciate how forthcoming you've been. I think the state, at least the first 3 months, the reaction has been very, very positive, and so I appreciate that. I actually had the same question that Regent Omari brought up. It would actually be, I'd be very interested to see what those various pie charts look like, because I think it can show us where we have some opportunities for improvement. And, we know that culturally in some states there's a much stronger relationship with even something as mundane as apparel. And these are some things that you're starting to see turn around, I think, around here, and that's great. The comment that I would make, and I know we're going to have opportunities on, for more detail. I know with the audit committee you had more detail, and we'll talk about some of the academic things with the ASA committee coming up. But I do want to just make the point, as I look at athletics, and you've got a remarkable opportunity in this position. And we all know that on a dollar-for-dollar basis, it gets more attention than any other aspect of what we do at the institution. So people are very aware of it. But I from my perspective, in the past, we've tended to look at athletics, the athletic department, as providing a service to the university. I look at it as managing resources of the university. I think it's a tremendous resource, and it has the capacity to generate substantial revenue. And if we look at it from that perspective, it is a service to manage those resources, but really there are resources that need to be protected and provide as much as possible. You do have a tuition contribution, but as we see in some schools, there's actually a direct contribution. I think if we set that as a goal, I think we're serving the institution the best we can. The other thing I'll say is, when we look at the individual sports and your principles and your philosophy, I would associate my remarks with Regent Anderson. It's so great to see that. And I also, think we've seen that bear out in as how you've comported yourself since you've been here. And I'm very happy and encouraged by that. But if we look at each individual sport, and if we don't start from the perspective of just assuming that that's what's there, and look at each one of them as, sort of day to day, as they get up, sort of validating the purpose for that particular sport to be here. And if you look at it from that perspective, I think a lot of those principles have to take hold. So, that it keeps you from becoming complacent about that presence, and makes you recognize that the scholarship is important, and personal behavior is important, and also maximizing the university's resources is important. So as you go forward, that's my philosophy as I look at intercollegiate athletics, and I couldn't be more thrilled to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Regent. Rocha, Regent Devine.
Thank you, Chairman. Welcome to the position. You've obviously had an opportunity now to settle in, and you've interacted, I think, well within the community, and you've obviously been well received across the state. And I want to congratulate you for all the effort and that number of hours that you and your family have put forth to establish your positioning here. Very quickly, I'm not going to reiterate what Regent Anderson or what Regent Rosa said about your standards on the ethics and the behavior, and I think you're setting a high benchmark, and we applaud, all of us on the board, the integrity of what you're doing and adding that to the program. And the physical care of the players and dealing with whatever issues come up, and the ongoing issues that need to be tended to with 700 and some athletes here at the University of Minnesota. My question, or the comment that I make to you, is really about the academic development of our student athletes here at the University of Minnesota. We've had a very, very high priority here on focusing on the academics. You've inherited a wonderful program of academic performance. And might I just ask, what are your plans, or what do you see happening, unfolding relative to the maintaining of that and the efforts that you're putting forth that you and your staff have as it relates to the student athlete experience in our four-year graduation and academic performance going forward?
Mr. Coyle?
Chair Johnson and Regent Devine, I take the opportunity to meet with every recruit when they come to campus. And the very first thing I tell them is, when you leave here in 4 years, you're going to get a document that can change your life. And I'm very pleased with JT Bruton, our academic staff, and what they've done in the MAC Academic Center. As you see by our records, we have 14 teams recognized nationally. We don't want to take a step back in that. That's very important to me. I can tell you at my previous stops, at my first stop at Boise State, 18 of our 19 teams recorded their highest grade point average ever during my time there. And obviously I haven't been here long enough, but again, that's our goal. Is academics is a big piece of what we do, because we want to graduate our kids. And we talk about, they go through a transformational period while they're here with us on campus, and they learn many lessons in the classroom, many lessons competing, and we want to make sure they're productive when they leave here and become productive members of society and transform the world. That's our goal.
Thank you, Regent Hsu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Director Coyle. Thank you for your efforts to date, and I want to congratulate you on a wonderful decision on freezing the scholarship seating for football. I think since I've been on the board, I've received more complaints about that than just about anything else that you can think of. I wanted to just discuss for a few few seconds here the facilities overview page and the alternatives for Athletes Village. I noticed the lineman facility is on here, but the skyways, or I forgot what the official term was, the skyways are not on here, and I think that's important because having students have to go outside in the wintertime to get between the buildings just doesn't seem right to me. And if we're going to be true to our title for this campaign, Nothing Short of Greatness, I think we ought to include not only the lineman building, but also the skyways. And so hopefully we'll find a way to do that. What I'm hoping for is, I know it says here that it's been priced. I haven't heard the price, and yesterday I asked for the timeline so that we could actually have time to make this decision and hopefully have the facility open concurrently with the rest of the building. And hopefully you can phone a friend, maybe Mike Bertelson's out there. There he is. I've been waiting for the date, and I haven't gotten it yet, so I just want to put on the record that I think we should have that date available to us so we can think about how to accomplish this.
Mr. Coyle?
Chair Johnson and Regent Hsu, obviously, as I talked on earlier, Athletes Village is a big part of our future, and we're so thankful for the board and President Kaler supporting that project. And the Skyway, the Lyman's Building, obviously are priorities for us, and I work with Suzanne Smith in her office in capital management and looking at those projects, and along with the track. We talked yesterday about the outdoor track, which is a priority for us because that impacts so many of our young men and women who compete in that sport. So we are gathering that information, and we can get that back to you.
Thank you.
Further comments or questions of Mr. Coyle? Regent Omari?
Thank you, Chair Johnson. I'll just mention one thing. Yesterday in the audit committee, as you were presenting before us, I asked about the students and how they are not being impacted by some of the negative attention that we get, and was just for the record and for the rest of the board to note that our students are entrenched in their scholarship, in their hard work on and off their playing fields or courts. And so I want to highlight that as something that's significantly important, because at the end of the day, without the students, we wouldn't have an athletics function. So.
Mr. Coyle, on behalf of the board, please extend our thanks to all of your coaches, head coaches, as well as assistant coaches. I don't think we fully realize the amount of time that coaching at a major university takes away from family and other activities of life. So please extend our deepest thanks and appreciation at all levels for all sports, to as well as your staff. Thank you very much, and I'd conclude with this. People do pay attention to athletics in this state. Football record of 6-6, okay. 7-5 gets better. 9-3 really makes our job a lot easier. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Johnson and Regents.
Next, we'd like to welcome UMF President Smittlekofer and Executive Vice President Malkerson to deliver the annual report on private giving. Welcome to the Board of Regents.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Johnson, Regents. Thanks for allowing us the time to present the University of Minnesota's Foundation Annual Report on Giving. And as you mentioned, I am thrilled to be joined by Becky Malkerson, our Executive Vice President. And today we're pleased. We're going to be reviewing our fiscal 2016 results. You'll see also as well how we stack up against our peers. We're going to recap the past 5 years, and we're going to provide a little bit of a look forward. And then along the way, as you know, we're going to share some inspiring, impactful stories of philanthropy. And so to start, just know Becky and I are privileged to meet many students and work alongside our university leaders and faculty experts. We also get to know and partner with our university's most dedicated and visionary supporters. Like our students, faculty, and staff, we at the foundation are anchored in the present, but focused on what lies ahead. And together we're planting the seeds of knowledge and discovery that changes lives and create a brighter future for us all. As you can see here, a focus on our future is ingrained in the foundation's vision statement. A future transformed by philanthropy, one dream, one legacy at a time. It's a vision that lifts up both donors who help transform the world with their generosity, as well as the beneficiaries of their philanthropy. And our mission describes our goals: to connect passion with possibility, inspire generosity, and to support greatness at the University of Minnesota. The university's priorities for students, faculty, research, and outreach drive our own priorities at the foundation. The foundation is a nonprofit organization governed by a 45-member board of trustees, with 1/4 of our trustees appointed by the University Board of Regents. 3 regents and the president also serves as trustees. Thank you, Regent Beeson, Regent Cohen, Regent McMillan, and President Kaler. And also thank you, Regent Broad, for serving on our audit committee. We're so appreciative of all of your guys' engagement and service to our board.
The foundation is privileged to work with donors in all corners of the state, and many who make their homes in other states and across the globe. Support comes into the university from many locations and benefits people throughout Minnesota and beyond. And the university's development community is more than just the foundation. We work collaboratively across the university system with development colleagues representing our campuses in the Twin Cities, Duluth, Morris, Crookston, and Rochester, as well as all 16 undergraduate and graduate academic units and our non-degree granting programs on the Twin City campus. Our foundation works closely with academic leaders to deliver strong results that we've seen in the past few years. Just as we say in our mission statement, our development professionals help connect donors' passions with the depth and breadth of possibilities and expertise across the university and across the state. So we'd like to start with a couple of stories that highlight the real impact of fundraising and our donors' generosity. Miriam Salama, kneeling in front of this photo, doesn't mind getting out of her comfort zone. So for 4 weeks this past summer, she shadowed healthcare workers at a prenatal clinic in rural Uganda. It was a perfect match for Miriam, who's a junior on this campus majoring in physiology and global studies. Her internship was funded by a new scholarship in the College of Liberal Arts. Thanks to the generosity of Paul Mulholland and his wife Valerie Cravens, 18 students received $5,000 to pursue hands-on learning outside the classroom. Miriam returned from her trip and told us there was something very beautiful and very intimate about being there at the moment of a child's birth. And Miriam is now paying it forward by sharing her experience as one of our CLA student ambassadors, representing the college to prospective students, alumni, and donors. Well, that global outlook also led to a truly historic gift this year for the Carlson School of Management. The school received a generous gift of $5 million, the University of Minnesota's largest ever gift from China. The gift was made by Eric Jing, a 2005 alumnus of the Carlson School of China Executive MBA program. In his native China, Eric has risen to become president of Ant Financial Services, an affiliate of Alibaba. He told us how grateful he is that his experience at the Carlson School expanded his horizons and helped him develop a global mindset. Eric's generous gift is aimed at strengthening the Carlson School's relationship with China. It will support student fellowships, an endowment professorship, and a faculty exchange program.
And that leads us to the primary reason for being here today. We are pleased to share the results of another great year of fundraising for the University of Minnesota. Fiscal 2016 saw over $312 million in total giving from our generous supporters. It was the second highest total giving in university history, second only to last year's all-time record. All told, over 72,000 donors, 56% who were alumni, made contributions to the university. This next chart shows how donors made their gifts and commitments to the university this past year. Only a portion of the gifts received in any given year are available for current spending by the university. 61% came to us in the form of cash, securities, and pledges to be paid over a period of 1 to 5 years. Another 1% came in the form of property and in-kind gifts, which typically account for 1 to 5% of our total giving. And then the remaining 38% was committed as a deferred gift to be received by the university at a future date in the form of an estate gift or retirement assets. These are gifts dollars that will flow to the university to help students and support faculty and research in years to come.
One other significant milestone in FY 2016 was the momentous conclusion of our Vision 2017 campaign for medicine and health. The campaign surpassed its goal over a year early, raising more than $1 billion to advance our work at the University of Minnesota. Thank you to all the Regents who joined us for the campaign celebration last month. It was great fun. Over 77,000 donors made gifts that resulted in the creation of nearly 250 new student scholarships and fellowships, 36 new faculty and research chairs and professorships, and helped make it possible to open our Biomedical Discovery District, the Masonic Children's Hospital, the Clinics and Surgery Center, and several other outstanding facilities. Our supporters are helping the university to solve complex medical and public health challenges in Minnesota and around the world, and the dollars raised have already saved lives. Well, just a few years ago, University of Minnesota physics professor Dr. Cynthia Cattell, pictured here, discovered the reason for her nagging fatigue. She learned that she had aggressive B-cell lymphoma, a blood cancer that required immediate treatment. Her intensive treatment was brutal, and worse yet, her cancer kept growing. Then her doctor asked if she was interested in a clinical trial underway here at the university. Cynthia did not hesitate to say yes. The drug Cynthia received was developed at our Masonic Cancer Center by Dr. Dan Valera, who was determined to produce a drug that would cause complete remission in cancer patients. It's painstaking research, highly regulated, and it's extremely expensive. Private philanthropy plays an especially important role in supporting research in bridging the gap before new ideas and treatments can garner funding from the NIH or other sources. Gifts from donors help us shorten the time from bench to bedside and get new treatments to patients faster. Cynthia responded well to the treatment and experienced minimal side effects. A month later, there was a 75% reduction in the size of her tumor, and after a second round, her tumors had vanished. Thanks to our donors and the collaboration of you physicians and researchers, Professor Cattell is here in the room today with us. Could we ask you to please stand, Cynthia, so we can give you a round of applause?
Cynthia's story and others like it drive home the impact of fundraising across our campuses. We celebrate that in 2016, we provided a record level of distributions to the university. Thanks to continued strong fundraising and investment management, the foundation distributed an all-time high of $214 million for spending by the university. These funds will support thousands of students with scholarships and fellowships, attract and retain talented faculty and research experts, and support academic programs, facilities, and important discoveries like the cancer drug that Cynthia received. And finally, as we wrap up our 2016 results, here we see that fundraising and distributions to the university have nearly quadrupled over the last 20 years, while our cost to raise a dollar has remained stable. Benchmarking of comparable nonprofits doing major gift fundraising indicates that a cost to raise a dollar of 10 to 20 cents is standard. As you can see from our graph, our cost to raise a dollar stands at 13 cents. It's something we're proud of and work to maintain to reflect our commitment to efficiency. To benchmark against our peers, the best report of fundraising rankings available comes from this industry report from fiscal 2015, so last year. Out of more than 1,000 institutions, the U of M ranked among the top 2%. We ranked 23 overall, and we moved up 2 spots from last year. We're 8th among the nation's public universities, up from 11th the previous year, leaping over Texas, North Carolina, and Texas A&M. And finally, we ranked 5th among those 14 schools in the Big Ten. And another way we benchmark ourselves is the size of the endowment. And according to the most recent published NACUBO data for fiscal 2015, we ranked among the top 4%. Out of 812 participating institutions, our endowment ranked 29th overall, 9th among public universities, and 5th among the 14 Big Ten schools. And these rankings are on par with where we stood last year. As you can imagine, with the significant size of these endowments, we typically don't see large shifting in rankings from year to year.
This look at the university's gift production over time puts our 2016 results in perspective. As the chart clearly shows, fundraising does not typically increase steadily year after year. We work with donors to secure gifts on a timetable that works for them. But it's also clear that we've recently been on a strong upward trajectory, reaching our 2 highest totals ever these past 2 years. Taking a closer look at just the last 5 years since President Kaler took office, the university has received over $1.9 billion in private support. This total includes private philanthropy that comes to the foundation, shown in maroon, as well as a portion of the dollars the university receives through private grants, which is shown in gold. These private grants come from entities like companies, foundations, associations, and hospitals, and are managed by the Office of the Vice President for Research, Brian Herman, and his team. Well, we're already seeing the impact of giving over these past 5 years of President Kaler's tenure. In addition to the wrap-up of the Medicine and Health campaign, several other colleges and units have completed focused fundraising efforts, including the College of Science and Engineering, the Law School, and the Arboretum. We've seen the groundbreaking of new facilities like the Bell Museum, the Gore Annex at Amundsen Hall, and the Bee and Pollinator Discovery Center, which is opening later this month. The university also has received visionary gifts from supporters like the Robina Foundation, which made it possible for the law school to launch the nation's first Center for New Americans. That support is helping us to fill a critical gap in access to legal services for immigrant communities. We're collaborating with the state and corporate and foundation partners, supporting everything from MnDrive to the Benson Innovation Center at the School of Nursing, to 3M scholarships at the College of Science and Engineering that aim to double our number of students from underrepresented groups. And we also have received a multi-million-dollar gift from CHS that aligns with another top priority, food and agriculture. It supports multiple areas across the U and will strengthen our capacity for educating the next generation of agricultural leaders.
As we look ahead to the next 5 years, philanthropy's focus on supporting greatness at the University of Minnesota will not waver. Academic and university leaders, and you, the Regents, have helped define the priorities shown here. We are working to ensure that our philanthropic story and opportunity align and elevate the university's strategic plan to be a place where teaching, research, and engagement come together to find solutions to society's most complex problems. The vision for philanthropy is to help take us from good to great, creating a margin of excellence in all we do. The university has long benefited from the foresight and determination of a savvy global network of donors. Private giving enables the university to ignite innovative research without delay and provide the competitive edge to attract the finest minds, helping to bring the best people and make their work truly great. We want to leave you with a reminder of how philanthropy is making amazing things possible now and for years to come. As President Kaler mentioned this morning, we watched with pride last month as 7 former Gopher athletes competed at the Rio Olympics. But this morning, I want to focus on former Gopher swimmer David Plummer, who took home medals in the 100 backstroke and the 4x100 medley relay. His story highlights the true ripple effect of scholarships. David grew up in Oklahoma, but came to Minnesota on an athletic scholarship in 2004. And during his time as a Gopher, he benefited from privately funded scholarships as well. David was a 14-time NCAA All-American and set school records in the 100 and 200 backstroke. He graduated with a degree in English, and he and his wife have settled in Minneapolis to raise their son. While training for the Olympics, he's been coaching the Wayzata High School boys swim team. His first year as coach in 2013, he led that team to a state championship and earned the title of Coach of the Year. Those scholarships that helped draw David to the U of M continue to have a ripple effect as he inspires the next generation of Minnesota athletes. With that kind of role model, we can look forward to new talent competing here at the U and maybe even someday on the global stage. And this final story is just remarkable. It's a long road from tending tobacco fields in North Carolina to being named the U of M's 2016 Homecoming Grand Marshal. But General Clara Adams Ender has always defied convention. The daughter of sharecroppers, General Adams Ender earned her MS in nursing here at the U in 1969. She went on to a remarkable 34-year military career that included overseeing 22,000 nurses as chief of the Army Nurse Corps and becoming the first Army nurse to command a major Army base, telling us that the U was instrumental in her education and her successful career. General Adams Ender made a $2 million bequest commitment to the university this past year. Her generous estate gift will extend her legacy of leadership, supporting the Dean of the School of Nursing. And the General will be back on campus next month to serve as our Gopher Homecoming Grand Marshal. You can tell it's a privilege to do the work we do every day and see how it truly transformed lives. As we end today's report, I'd like to acknowledge the value of your partnership as Regents. On behalf of the Foundation and the entire university development community, thank you for all you do and your tremendous engagement and commitment to the university. I'd like to especially thank President Kaler and his wife Karen for the time they dedicate to telling our story and meeting with donors and prospects. They continue to do an outstanding job representing the university as they travel the state, the country, and even the globe this past year. We look forward to our continued partnership with all of you in supporting greatness at the University of Minnesota. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Presidents Middlekoffer and Vice President Malkerson, and to President Kaler for your efforts as well. We have a few moments for comments and questions in regard to the foundation and giving. And on behalf of all of us, congratulations and thanks for your efforts as well. Regent Cohen, please.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. I just want to second the thank you and to also say what a phenomenal job I think our foundation does. The enthusiasm that you showed today and the kind of enthusiasm that you show and direct campus-wide and system-wide in terms of the giving. It's to be commended, and having had a record-breaking year last year and then to come up with another year that is almost as record-breaking is really phenomenal work. So thank you so much for all you do.
Thank you, Regent Cohen. Regent Broad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, you know, one of the things that I think sometimes gets lost in the big picture of the big numbers, you know, we had the celebration over the $1 billion, which was amazing. And I heard one of the donors say they had watched a movie called The $1 Million Baby, but this was the $1 billion baby. So congratulations to you both on that and your team. But what I meant was what gets lost sometimes is not just that the money comes in, but how it comes in. So I really want to congratulate you on your focus on the how and focusing on the priorities that align with the university, and also focusing on ensuring that the dollars that are coming in are legacy dollars that focus forward. And so the focus on endowment, I think, is a very strong focus, and I want to congratulate you for recognizing the how matters a lot.
Thank you, Regent Broad. Regent Simmons.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. My congratulations and thank you as well to UMF and the president for a really extraordinary achievement. I want to highlight two issues you brought forward. One is that of our 70-some thousand donors, over a third of them are not alumni, which says to me that there are many people who didn't even get to directly experience the university who realize how important it is in their lives. So that's terrific that you have identified and capitalized on that appreciation for the university. The other observation, and I'm glad you singled out Mr. Jing because that is an unusual gift. It's international and a person who came from a one-year graduate program. Both of those are kind of rare in university philanthropy, and I know you've been attentive to that audience, and I expect we'll see more from you there. And thank you for pursuing and being successful.
Thank you.
Very good. Anyone have a final comment? Regent Devine.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, I'm not going to reiterate what my fellow regents have already expressed. We're all very, very grateful for the work that you've all done. And I just make this last final closing remark. The celebration we had last month, Becky, and your work that you've done on that campaign, it's a conclusion of one, and we're probably on the onset of another. But, to recognize the achievements and the accomplishments of what you've done in your body of work here is really unbelievable. And I just want to make sure we pay heed to that today because you have done a wonderful, wonderful job for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Regent Rocha, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I echo those comments of appreciation. I also would just kind of pose to you for future conversation that within this amazing success, I'm fairly confident you probably have opinions about what could make it even more successful as an institution. In some things we've talked about, with academic health opportunities and pulling some of those things together, some of the athletic success opportunities and things of that variety. So I would just ask as we go forward that you keep that in front of us because it is so critical. I mean, I look at not just that growing number of the endowment, but what happens every year that wouldn't happen without the support provided by the foundation. So the more that you can provide us that kind of information and give us a sense of urgency on moving some of these things forward, I think would really help this board work with you to continue to develop the success. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Regent Rocha, a 9-3 or better football record will really enhance fundraising.
I agree.
Very good. Thank you very much for your
The future looks
efforts.
bright.
The board will now consider action on a capital budget amendment related to Pioneer Hall and the super block dining facility. The Facilities Planning and Operations Committee has reviewed and acted on a recommendation related to this project. But before we receive the committee's report, I'd like to invite Interim Vice President Bertelsen, Associate Vice President Smith, and Director McLaughlin to provide an overview for the entire board. Mr. Bertelsen, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Regents. I beg the patience of the Facilities Committee, who has heard me say almost all these things before, but this is an important topic, I know, for all of you on the board. To set the stage, I just want to acknowledge that this has been an issue that has had a lot of review and has developed differing points of view. I've appreciated the energy around wanting to choose the best path for the university and the effort to discern and collaborate what that path is. We've done our best as staff to answer all the questions as quickly and thoroughly as possible to support an informed decision for you today. I believe there are certain core assumptions that we all share. One is wanting to provide quality housing options for our university students, and the importance of setting housing goals to support your enrollment plan. Having the clarity around these is helpful to us as staff in helping define a target for our work. We've looked at a significant amount of data, and with this information, there have been different opinions that have developed, and there are certainly subjective judgments that are required. In the end, there are multiple reasonable pathways, and now we need to decide the one to take and then execute it well will be our job. The administration's recommendation is the same as it was in July, with the one change that it now recommends adding a floor to the central spine of Pioneer to increase student housing capacity by 60. The administration believes that though options discuss about a modest investment into tens of millions in Pioneer is really not the best use of funds, as Pioneer will continue to be a housing that does not meet current ADA, building code standards, sufficient bathroom capacity, or expected student experience in housing through things like community spaces or dining. A major renovation will help transform Pioneer into a modern and high-quality housing and dining facility. We believe that Pioneer is the right location for both a renovated housing and a consolidated dining that can serve both the current student superblock and imagined options for housing along the River Road. This can be done while still meeting our overall housing goals in alignment with the set enrollment targets by temporarily using some apartment space for first-year students and utilizing master leases for growth in apartment needs for second-year students through fiscal 18 and 19. You can also advance those goals by providing the needed space for growth and enrollment beyond fiscal 19 when Pioneer is fully renovated and the master lease program will continue to be in place. And finally, for us, the university continuing to watch for and be open to other options, including purchase of existing near-campus housing. Now we'll walk through the presentation and look forward to your questions and comments.
Thank you very much.
First, I think most of you know by now where the superblock is in the southwest corner. Just to highlight, this is where Pioneer is. The intended goals really are the same as we've talked about for some time. How do we address building obsolescence, both facility condition, ADA, and codes? How do we preserve residents' hall bed capacity and safe and functional space? Expand residence hall capacity to meet our housing goals for enrollment plan? Enhance the student experience? Offer student facilities that compete well with peers and internal alternatives, improve the dining experience, increase efficiency in that dining operation, and align with our campus development plan. In short, how do we meet our capacity while providing quality experience in safe and functional spaces? We spent a lot of time talking about Pioneer these past few months, but the conversation goes back quite some time, 7 or more years, and you can see here the timeline of how the project has progressed through today and our recommendation to you today. A bundle, for the project rationale, bundle of supportive services are available to students within university-owned housing, such as community dining, educational and development programs, staff with specialized education and training to respond to student needs, as well as interaction between institutional administrative systems that helps facilitate problem resolution if necessary. Incoming students who start their academic careers in university housing are well equipped to address challenges of academic rigor, personal development, and social connections at a pivotal time in their lives. The superblock, you know, the 4 halls, residence halls, 2,800 students, 2 dining halls, in a highly desirable location that creates a first-year focused neighborhood defined by density, green space, and adjacencies. University housing exists to enhance the student experience and aligns its programs and planning to meet and support the institution's enrollment strategy. The board adopted a new enrollment strategy in March of 2016 that calls for growth in the undergraduate body to 32,000 to 33,000 students, and has set goals for housing of 90% of our first-year students in university-owned and managed housing, retaining 25% of those students for a second-year experience, and providing housing to 10% of the incoming transfer student class. This chart has been presented before to the Facilities Committee, and I think a larger version has been handed out to you. Look for confirmation. It has. Thank you. The board approved master leases, and this was updated to reflect the board approved master leases and how capacity demand would be impacted by an approved Pioneer project. You can see that investment in the beds in Pioneer will have sufficient residence hall capacity to meet the needs of our first-year class for many years. For those of you that this is new, the key you can see in the bottom, the blue represent our own university-owned residence halls, the yellow owned university apartments, and the orange the master lease apartments. The first line is shows a target for 90% of our first-year class, how many you would need for that. Second line is 25% of our second year, and the third line being 10% of our third year. And in each of these years, we're able to have some capacity beyond those numbers for other students who have an interest in being in university housing. In the handout, you can also see at the bottom the absolute numbers for enrollment, so you don't have to just see the bar charts. In order to meet the projected growth, several contingent strategies are being deployed in this chart, represented in this chart. One is protection of existing residence hall supply, which is adequate to accommodate 90% of our first-year students. The apartment supply through master leasing, and examination of opportunities continues to be an opportunity for us to acquire existing facilities in adjacent spots to campus where it may support long-term campus planning. There are many reasons that Pioneer does not meet our standard for student housing, which we've talked about in some detail already. In addition, we believe there are opportunities, not just the deficiencies, to both for what we want to grow and build, both to raise the quality of the housing and achieve degree of cost efficiencies and better service by consolidating 2 dining facilities. Just briefly, a few quick pictures to show some of the deficiencies: the small bathrooms that are quite outdated, our older style cafeteria kitchens and serveries, which are undersized for the number of dining students, and would be very expensive to renovate, really twice as expensive to do twice.
So in July, the Facilities Planning and Operation Committee, we reviewed 5 options for Pioneer, 2 which had variations, bringing the total to 7. You see highlighted here today in yellow the recommendation that we bring to you today. This slide provides a breakdown of how the recommended project adds up. You'll see that it accomplishes all of our goals that we set out while adding beds to our overall residence hall stock. The construction of the residence hall portion of this project, when all is said and done, will be cheaper than the 17th Avenue Residence Hall project was. You can see at the bottom where we have escalated this project to $2018, and we're about $1,200 less a bed. Here are a few reasons that we believe this option is the right one. We improve our student experience, we provide more beds, and we enhance dining for 2,800 plus students. In addition, we retain those character-defining features of the current existing Pioneer Hall. This is an aerial view of the project looking from the direction of Fulton and towards the new dining area facility. This is an aerial view of the project looking the opposite way from Centennial, where we're looking at the new main entry. And from the ground, this is the same looking towards from Centennial, and this details the new construction that is really in keeping with the original building. And again, from the opposite way, looking at the dining courtyard from Fulton Street. This is actually the 17th Avenue dining facility, and it's a picture of a similar look to what we'll be doing here at Pioneer Hall that will scale to this project. An example that we'd like to share with you on the left as you look at it is the existing Pioneer basement level. This in orange, light orange, is both the dining hall, the servery, kitchen, all storage and support. What you see on your right is the newly constructed dining hall that's on the ground level with natural light. All the supporting kitchen, servery, storage, and ancillary areas remain on the basement floor. The expanded dining seats 850. It's on the at-grade level. Again, on your left-hand side, we show the existing residential floors that we have today. You'll notice that community space is in the orange-ish color. There is no community space on any of the residential floors as it exists today. The building is approximately 27 feet wide. The corridors are less than 4 feet wide, and the average double room size is 174 square feet. Additionally, the 2 wings do not connect. On the right-hand side, really replicating what has been so successful at 17th Avenue Residence Hall, is our proposed new facility. It includes a significant amount of community study space, and the 2 C-shaped wings are now knit together by a central spine, making this a contiguous floor. The dashed red lines that you can see in the center show the existing building's floor plate. The floor plate remains the same at the end courtyard conditions. The building is approximately 48 feet wide, corridors are expanded to 6 feet, and the average size of the double room is 210 square feet. This picture is just a blow-up, so you can see in better detail what we have. You can see the bathrooms in green that are close to all of the residents' bedrooms. And you'll notice that it also includes single bathrooms for gender neutral. The total cost of the 756-bed Pioneer option is $81,725,000, and the total cost for the consolidated dining is $22,725,000, for a combined total project of $104,500,000. The project will be funded from university debt. The anticipated completion date, assuming regional approval today, is September 2019. Our estimated annual operating costs are $14.30 a square foot. We currently have TKDA as our pre-design architect. Our construction manager at risk is yet to be selected. Upon approval, we will issue an RFP for the full design for the project.
We've heard from many of you the question of how can you take 700 beds offline when enrollment is growing? First, we will change how we operate Wilkins Hall, a university apartment facility adjacent to Sanford Hall, by designating Wilkins as a first-year student facility, housing facility, for the 2 years that Pioneer is offline. We will also develop a modified meal plan for these students, which will enable them to eat meals in the Sanford Hall facility. Second, we are bringing on 936 new apartment beds next fall through the board-approved master leases. The addition of these apartment facilities gives us a net increase of 243 beds, sufficient enough to meet board-adopted occupancy targets. Finally, we will manage the number of third and fourth year students who will be able to return to university housing during this 2-year period based on first-year student admissions targets and second-year student interest. Here's a closer look at the capacity and demand chart that Vice President Bertelsen previously discussed. This chart focuses specifically on this year through 2019, when we would expect Pioneer to reopen. You will notice that the yellow bar, representing university-owned apartments, extends into the first-year student need for the 2 years that Pioneer is offline. As I mentioned previously, we will utilize Wilkins Hall as a first-year student housing facility to meet remaining demand for first-year students during this time. It should also be noted that we do have, and have always had, some first-year students living in university-managed apartments. Some first-year students select apartment-style housing as their top preferenced housing choice, and others include students who participate in various reserved space programs for student athletes and international students. Once we reopen Pioneer in 2019, we will have sufficient residence hall capacity to meet the targets set out by the board in its adopted enrollment strategy.
And that's the conclusion of our formal presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Before I turn to Regent McMillan for a report from the Facilities Planning and Operations Committee and perhaps a motion, on behalf of all of us, Mr. Bertelsen, Ms. Smith, Ms. McLaughlin, your staff, thank you, thank you, thank you. I know you have spent enormous amount of time and hours working with us as Regents, individually, collectively, and we want to acknowledge your efforts. Regent McMillan.
Chair Johnson, thank you. The Facilities Planning and Operations Committee first considered the Pioneer Hall renovations and superblock dining renovations at its July meeting. Since then, the committee and interested members of the board have had considerable opportunity to look at additional data. I want to thank and recognize Vice President Bertelsen and his team for making a considerable amount, and I mean considerable amount, of additional detail available. And then yesterday, the committee once again visited this, moving from review to review and action, and the committee voted 4-2 to recommend approval of the capital budget amendment in the amount of $104,500,000 for the hall renovation and the consolidated superblock dining facility. And with that report, I move approval of the capital budget amendment.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We have before us now the Pioneer Hall budget amendment. Before comments, questions from Regents, I'd like to turn to the President for comment. President Kaler.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. As a consequence of conversations yesterday in the Facilities Committee and with some of you, subsequently, it's clear that many of you share the concern of the disconnect from some dormitories, Centennial, with the dining services, particularly in the cooler parts of the year. And so we are prepared, Mr. Burleson and I, to commence a study of the feasibility of an enclosed walkway, either on grade or below grade or above grade, between the two sets of dormitories so that all students could enter the dining facility remaining inside during the winter, and we will report back to you on the feasibility of that and the cost as soon as possible. I can't promise the October meeting, but certainly by December at the very latest. We anticipate, given the schedule, that we can proceed apace if you approve this and then add that walkway if it proves feasible as the project moves forward. So we will study that and report back.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the McMillan motion, that is before us, Regent Rocha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had a robust conversation about this yesterday, and this one kind of snuck up on me. I know a lot of people have talked about how long we've talked about this, but I don't really recall being that engaged in it, but for the last couple of months, and have been working, to really understand the issue. And I would say that the effort that's been expended by Vice President Bertelsen in this matter has been exceptional, and I appreciate his candor and I appreciate his efforts, and I also understand that he inherited some of the informational challenges that we have about it. I would say in relation to the project itself, first, it's a great project, and the result of the project is really important, and I think that having a higher quality facility than where Pioneer is right now is of great value. However, I approach the issue from the standpoint first of what did we establish as a priority, and I think that it's important that we as a board defend our role. When we establish priorities and then we have things that are brought in relation to those priorities, they should meet those priorities. And the challenge here is our first priority was to add capacity. And we talk about some of the issues with the apartment-style housing and the master leases, but where I think I'm a little bit maybe taking a different perspective than others on this board is that at another time, those facilities were actually expected to be part of our overall strategy, that the private sector was going to provide more housing opportunities on campus. And so when we take those over, we add control for the university, but we're really not actually adding capacity. So you're kind of pushing another group of students to find other housing opportunities. And so were it to me, we would take a different planning approach to this. And that's where my real objection is right now, is we have a master plan, but as I ask questions about the master plan, what's our next step? What's our next action? Those questions can't be answered. And so that turns our master plan from a plan into something that's really more aspirational. I think we can do better than that. I think we need to do better than that. And so that's the sole source. It's not, for me at all, it's not a matter of the fact that $1/10 billion isn't being well spent by making this facility better for students as they are. It's the fact that I want to push the administration to work on that master plan and be able to give us more specificity on what our next step is, because when we set our priority as a board to increase the capacity for freshmen to have on-campus dormitory-style housing, that's what we should be spending our resources on. And when I ask the question, how does this impact our next step? We don't know. How does this affect our debt capacity for taking an opportunity to build another dorm when there's a space available, or even identifying where one could be built now? We don't know. I don't think that's great planning. And so that's my primary objection. So and when we talk about this, and some people say, well, we really just need to give the students a better experience. I agree, but the analogy I would use is you've got 8 kids, and you're feeding 5 of them, but you don't have enough food for the other 3. You don't spend your resources making the food better for the 5 that are eating already until the others are actually being fed. And so that's why I thought we had the right priority by saying we want to expand the volume so that all students that want on-campus housing, this on-campus housing experience could have it. I don't think this is taking us there. So finally, I would just say that I plan to vote against this. I still find great value in what this will end up doing for us. I don't despair in this vote because this vote is simply a modification of our capital budget, and so it'll come back to us for the actual approval of a contract, at which point we'll have an opportunity to look and see what the real nuts and bolts of it are. And the fact that President Kaler and Vice President Bertelsen are very much in tune to the concern about the student experience means a great deal to me, and I appreciate that, President Kaler, and look forward to what develops from there, because I think there are some real opportunities there. In that process, and this is something I think that others that have served in that role in the past can appreciate, I'd like more student input. This is a really big part of the student experience, and even though these students won't specifically be affected by it, I think having them part of this process and even talking about things like access to dining and what their primary goals are, we've had to sort of try to go in and divine what that's actually, that was probably an awkward choice of words there, Regent Devine, but to try to identify what those actual preferences are. And I think that actually having the students provide that direct input, I think would be meaningful in this process. So I look forward to the improvement in the experience for these students. I note that we'll actually have a decrease in total bed opportunities during the period, but for that reason, I'm not going to support this resolution, but we'll certainly look forward to working with Vice President Bertelsen and President Kaler as we get closer to the actual breaking of ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Rocha. Mr. Bertelsen, if you'd like to comment or just let us have discussion, it's up to you.
Mr. Chair, Regent, maybe the only comment would be I agree with the concept that we need to not just think about the housing that we own, but to think more globally about the housing that's available in the market, because it's not just about the students who live here in the spaces that we own or manage. It's about all the housing and all the 55,000 students, and we have to keep an eye for that. It is partly upon that us understanding and review of the market that led us to this approach to not necessarily jump in and build more apartment housing at this time. The model that we showed suggests that we believe that with a renovated Pioneer, we'll have sufficient of the resident hall to meet the first-year students' target. And then the next push is what kind of housing is available for second and maybe even third and fourth year, and that maybe is more of an apartment style. Trying out the master plan where we believe there's some flexibility and some space in the market where we initially, and we've had a big push of private sector to build housing, and in our assessment that market got overbuilt a little bit, and we're not necessarily pushing those students out, though I understand that analogy. We believe there's actually space in that market that we can find and take advantage of that, so that we're just better utilizing the space which is in the area. So that's, we are paying attention to the market, we are paying attention to what the downward impact of that is. And you're correct that we haven't established the next site today, but partly we're trying to establish are we shooting for the right sort of market to meet the next student? Because we think it wouldn't be prudent necessarily to solve that without learning. We want to learn as we go through and learn from this next step. And so we do have a financial model to help identify for us implications financially of any given choice, and can lay that out for us as we continue to evaluate the master plan and the housing plan. I'll stop for now.
Thank you. Further discussion on the McMillan-Lucas motion? Further discussion?
No.
Regent Devine.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a few points. As all of you know, we've spent many months on this. We've spent better than 20 months kind of evaluating a whole housing strategy here on the Board of Regents. And I do want to echo what Regent Johnson had said earlier about the work, Vice President Bertelsen, that you've done, and I call it the Lori team that have done a wonderful job of really digging in and for a number of years trying to evaluate and bring forth various proposals of what we've done. we've made some decisions, and just to touch on the historic context of a big decision that we're making this morning here. We've made decisions along the way here which have moved us on the path to what we're on today, and that's going to move us forward into the future. We've made some decisions that we're going to stay in the medical area there, that we want to use the river site, that we want to concentrate our freshman, sophomore, first year, second year experiences along the river. We've moved that forward, and as such, we're moving ahead. We're not stuck, as some have maybe said previously, but we've moved ahead on a path. The decision's a big one. It's a $100 million decision, 100 and whatever the number is this morning, $104 million decision. And I'm pleased that we're doing that. And I also want to contrast the fact that we've already spent $100 million year to date, at least in the time that I've been on the board, on the 7 dorms. We have done significant work, and I think that gets overlooked, and we've not talked about the fact that we've invested in the existing buildings. It's been a little bit of a catch-up game that we've been involved in, but we have made a significant improvement in terms of what we've done on our student experience. And if we look at our priorities, our goal priorities right now as a board, it's number 2 is to establish further excellence in the student experience, and we've accomplished that in the work that we've done and the work that we're doing going forward. Let me just echo back for what are the goals of the work that we've really set out to do here in this last 20 months. It's centered in and around increasing capacity and increasing capacity of nonprofit student housing. There's a difference of what's going on in the market that's been built in and around the community. That is all for-profit housing. There's a different motivation of those that own, manage, and operate those facilities versus the University of Minnesota that owns the buildings where it's nonprofit in nature. And the expansion of beds internally means the cost of attendance is going to be measured. It's going to be less, there's less of a driving factor there than there is in the for-profit market. It's not to say we're ignoring the for-profit market, and they've done a lot of wonderful work here in improving the quality of the student experience, but it's been at a price, and that price gets added to the cost of attendance, which adds to the student debt issues and so on. And we've paused in this 20-month journey or 20-something month journey, and we did stop and really develop an enrollment strategy to give the vice president and his staff direction on what is it we're really trying to accomplish. And what we have finished in February was a very important step in reaching towards the decision that we're making here today, in that we've got facts and figures, and we've now established what we're going to do. We've made a commitment to expand enrollment in our colleges, and we've also expanded and committed to what we want to do with sophomores and juniors and the impact of the data that the other vice presidents of the provost's office have provided to us. So we've got a solid base for making statistical decisions going forward. Obviously, we've improved the student experience, which was the 3rd Regent goal, and then the 4th, which was a high level of integrity and transparent, and the input and inclusion from all the stakeholders to get to where we are today. And that is an important aspect of what we've decided to do, is to have these alternatives. I am not going to be supporting the vote today, not because I don't want more student housing or that I want improvements in student housing. I made that clear. I've met with the president, I've met with many of you on the board individually, and I've met with the people within the housing office. They deeply understand I care about the student experience and making sure it's a quality experience and all of those issues. But I've got really 3 reasons that I'm not going to support this particular project this morning here in terms of what we're doing. I believe that the cost is significant at what we've elevated to, and if we add the skyway or the walkway or whatever it's going to be, there's going to be some additional expense there. That in of itself, we've made a decision we're going to invest $100+ million in university student housing, which is good. That's nonprofit student housing. But I do believe, as we've seen in the examples, there's a number between maybe 15 million, which is, I guess I'm convinced yesterday in some of the discussions, we can't do the improvements that we need to do at 15 million, but there's probably a number in between 15 and 100 and some million that would renovate that building to the same level that we've invested the other 100 million that we've already spent on housing. And I think that in looking at that, we can still do the ADA, we can still do the HVC, we can do a lot of the things, check the box that we've got in the presentation to upgrade that as we have done in our other dorms. And so in of that, I think the issue that I look at is instead of, we got a commitment here to increase the cost of housing roughly, 5 or 6% over the next 5 years, there's going to be a cost to the students going forward relative to what's going on. And I draw attention to that, the expenditure relative to doing that. The decision of $100 million here does not expand student housing, the total number of beds capacity. And, and that's one of the reasons I'm voting against it, because I would like to see us, as an alternative, address that. Now, we have addressed, and I do want to compliment the staff and the work that's been done. We've expanded in our master lease program that we did last month. We're expanding student housing. However, that student housing that we're expanding and that we're running from the private for-profit sector is going to have 12-month leases. We're going to be paying market rate rents in terms of what those students that are going to be living in there. So the leases that they have, they're going to be paying what the market is paying out here. It's not necessarily nonprofit student housing. We've addressed it formally, and I think that that's good, and it's going to assist the housing office in the placement of students that can't find housing, and particularly those students that come in that are sophomores and transfer students that come mid-year. We're going to be able to help them get housed, and I think that's an accomplishment in terms of where we've, as a board, have succeeded in what we've been doing in our work.
Regent Devine, can you conclude your remarks?
Yep, I will. And finally, let me just say that the third item is really about the student money. The money that's being used that we're committing to today is all student money. Unlike other money that we appropriate and spend, the issue that we've got is state money and tuition money cannot be used on housing. So it's all user paid for. So this $100 and some million commitment that we're making is student money. And so in of that, we've got that issue that we're looking at right now going forward here. And I'm looking at it from the standpoint of the cost of attendance. So in the graph that we've handed out today, you can see on the blue bar, this puts off a decision to build new housing for students, the way it's projected, new first-year students, the dormitory-style housing. It pushes it off until about 2027, if you look at the bar graph. So that's 10 years away. So I go back to the nonprofit model, I go back to the student experience. We've been demonstrated that the student experience in the first year or two is very important to us. And we're delaying the ability to add that housing for some period of time going forward. So in of that, those are my comments. I wanted to say those things. I know we defer, like on mHealth, to the Regents that spend a lot of time on this. It's been an issue that I've worked closely with both Lori's on for 10-plus years, way before I got on the board. But I thank you for the deferral of time here to be able to share my thoughts on what we're doing. And I'm supportive, obviously, of improving the student experience. We've got different paths that we're looking at, and I'm trying to be mindful of what the students' investment is going to be going forward here as it relates to this. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members, for hearing me out this morning.
Thank you, Regent Devine. Regent Broad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the opportunity as well. I, had been a strong supporter of the Pioneer Project. Ever since in 1990, I had bats in my room and a tennis racket by my bed. I've thought that building needs some remodeling. But having said that, I was concerned about the students having to walk outside in their jammies to grab breakfast. So I really appreciate President Kaler and Vice President Bertelson's commitment to bring forward options to ensure that the student experience that we're all trying to make better actually gets better. If we're going to spend $100 million plus, we ought to spend it right and spend it smart and spend it appropriately. And so I look forward to seeing those options be brought back to the board. But because I've heard a few times the concerns over for-profit housing, I will also tell you I'm a strong supporter of yes and. I think we need nonprofit housing, but I think we need to leverage in the way that we are leveraging the private market in putting some management opportunities for the university to provide good student experience and good opportunities within that for-profit market. So I'm a strong supporter of the master lease approach. I think that we need a balance of approaches and a broad range of approaches, and I think you've done that. And I would encourage you to continue leveraging that private market because I think it's an important market to leverage. We cannot afford to just have nonprofit housing.
Thank you, Regent Broad. Regent Hsu on McMillan-Lucas motion.
Thank you, Chair Johnson, and thank you, presenters, especially IVP Bertelson. I think since you've come into the role. You've worked very hard to answer questions, provide information. I did not live at Pioneer Hall. I did live at Frontier Hall, as everyone knows. I did walk under the tunnel every day, multiple times, to have dinner at Pioneer, or breakfast, lunch, and dinner at Pioneer Hall. So I was concerned that we were going to force 1,400 students to come from Territorial and Centennial to come to the new consolidated dining room, but I think the President's comments at the beginning of this helped get me past part of that, although I know that there are considerable hurdles to actually creating a workable solution for that, and who knows what the cost is going to be. But I wanted to just make a few comments. I came into this late. I heard about it. I think I was invited on a tour right before we voted on the budget, because I was concerned when I heard that we might have to close it, and I was concerned that we were told that we were going to have 6% increases in housing costs for 6 years. I did a little math, and I found out that over 6 years works out to a 42% increase on housing costs just in that 6-year period. So that would mean a $10,000 per year cost today would be over $14,000 in 6 years, which concerns me because the total cost of attendance at the university is a big problem for us and will continue to be a big problem as we go forward. My other concerns are more related to the fact that Pioneer Hall is still not the least desirable dorm, and we have Bailey Hall in St. Paul, which understandably for Twin Cities residents is not ideal, even though we have the connector, the campus connector system. Pioneer Hall still rates above Sanford Hall and Comstock. Oh, is it Comstock or, I don't have it here, but it rates higher than 2 of our dorms. And I asked you the question, you said you were moving in students last week, and I said, oh, well, how many students did you move out? And I'll ask the question again today. How many students have moved out since they moved in last week? I think it's probably 0. I think we probably have more students moving in. But anyway, I do support improving Pioneer Hall. I don't know that the scenario that we have is the best scenario for us. I do believe that we should be increasing capacity before we do a massive renovation where, ceiling height is not going to be ideal. I think that was in one of the reports that we got, because it's got a low ceiling height, and to fit in all the new HVAC equipment and sprinkler systems will not look quite right. It will not look like a $100 million building should look, in my estimation. And I would much rather build a new structure similar to 17th Avenue, where we have things that we believe students want, like a sustainable water system, a green roof, some of those types of features, as well as very comfortable living and dining facilities and community space. So I can't support the project, but I do look forward to working with you going forward to try and find the best way to spend the money and obviously to make it possible for students to not have to go outside to search for food from the other 2 dormitories. And just wrapping up here, I would just say that right now, 2 of the concerns that I have with cost of attendance, or one of the concerns I have with cost of attendance, could be alleviated by creating or using Pioneer Hall as a lower cost housing option. I know other schools actually have different rates based on the quality of building and location of buildings and things like that. And I think this was an opportunity. It looks like it's not going to be, but it looks like an opportunity where we could have said, if you want to live at Pioneer Hall, we'll charge you less because it doesn't have air conditioning and it doesn't have meals on weekends and that kind of stuff. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. I cannot support the motion, but I look forward to seeing how we're going to move this forward and provide a better student experience.
Thank you, Regent Shu. Regent Beeson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good discussion. I do support a evaluation of a tunnel system. If we are going to spend this kind of money, we really need to find a solution to have a weather-protected access to the dining space. I never spent any time in the buildings when I was in college. I had the best dining arrangement, my mother's home cooking. And so I think I've been over there twice since I've been a regent. We've made a lot of progress in what has been a relatively short period of time. It's been planful, but I understand the frustration about this only being a first phase. But I think it's really hard to master plan the whole southeast part of the campus because of the fact that we get moving pieces with the academic health center. This is phase one. I don't like modest rehabs. I don't like the idea of partially doing a building. There's been a tradition around here for the last 20 years where this board and every administration since UDOF has said, we're going to do this building, we're going to do it right, and we're not going to look back on it in 10 years and wish we'd done it better. So there is sticker shock, but housing is expensive. It's more expensive than any other type of building we do except for maybe lab space. And it's a lot of money, but the reason it hasn't been done is because of that cost. It's systems heavy, and housing gets no donors. It doesn't have any champions. The academic buildings have champions. The athletic buildings have champions. And when this board approves athletics village, it's going to be partially debt financed for $50 million. We move that through quickly. We don't beat ourselves up over what that added cost might be because the students at the end of the day pay every new operating cost around here and they pay every debt service because new academic buildings don't create new revenue to pay for debt service for operating costs. So at the end of the day, students we're always pushing, they're the variable cost. And for once, I think we need a building that they can be the beneficiary of. That's where they spend the majority of their time. So I look forward to working with the staff on future phases. I want to address Regent Roche's comment about the market. This will be an overbuilt market. Developers always overbuild, and they are on their way to overbuilding this market. So I think whatever students we might be displacing, there will be more housing available. I do like the master lease concept that Regent Broad talked about. It's a good public-private partnership.
Thank you, Regent Beeson. Regent McMillan, to your motion, any comments?
No, I think the debate's been robust, and I'll let it stand where it is.
Okay, further comments on the Regent McMillan-Lucas motion on Pioneer Hall Superblock Dining Facility? Further comments? Are there further comments? If not, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Okay. The ayes have it. The motion prevails. Thank you very much. We'll now turn to the biennial budget review request. President Kaler, will you begin? And Mr. Bertelsen, I think you can remain. I'm sorry, Mr. Volnau also. President Kaler?
Very good. Thank you, Chair Johnson. We'll get some slides up here in a minute, but as I've said before many times in presenting our biennial budget request to the state, and this year I don't think it's ever been truer, our budget is not simply numbers and charts. It's a reflection of our values, our vision, and our commitment to our students across our system, to their families, and to Minnesota's health, prosperity, and quality of life. And this budget request is true to our core mission as the state's singular land-grant research institution. We take our responsibility in that role, I take our responsibility in that role very seriously. It is the responsibility to conduct a wide range of research to pursue knowledge for the common good, the responsibility of engaging fully and in new ways with our community and our business partners, and the deep responsibility in preparing the next great generation of leaders and lifelong learners in a way that moves them efficiently and affordably to their degrees. And finally, it's a responsibility to continue to strengthen our partnership with the legislature and the state of Minnesota. And you'll see our goals for this biennial request to the state align nicely with the Minnesota dashboard established by Minnesota Management and Budget, respond to the performance measures set by the legislature, and advance our own goals and progress card metrics. Our goals are also driven by the Twin Cities Strategic Plan's vision for us to reject complacency, to tackle grand challenges, and to leverage our location for the common good. So this is an aspirational and indeed ambitious but prudent budget proposal to keep the university excellent, accessible, and every day make a difference in the lives of Minnesotans. Let me begin by highlighting where we now stand as a university. We're healthy, and by most measures, as we've been for the past 5 years, on an upward trajectory. Our system-wide four-year graduation rate is up, as is our total degrees granted, including STEM degrees. And those are key legislative performance measures and advance our own progress card measures. Our research enterprise remains strong and vital, and our role as the driver of innovation in Minnesota is undisputed, with continuous annual record numbers of new startups created by our outstanding faculty and nurtured through our Office for Technology Commercialization. And we're on the right track. Our sponsored awards are up more than 30% over the past 10 years. We need to keep moving firmly forward. Let me detail the 5 elements of the request, including 3 new initiatives and 2 that are directly related to issues from previous legislative sessions. And you can see them on this slide. We're seeking funding first and foremost for student success. Student success to, among other things, continue to improve graduation rates system-wide, provide more access to high-demand STEM fields for our students, and so to support Minnesota's employers' workforce needs. Additional MnDrive money that matches our strengths with the state's needs. For our core mission to retain faculty, maintain programs, and plan for flat resident tuition rates. And then to address ongoing needs that we have previously identified, funding for critical health training to benefit families in underserved communities, and for operations of the Bell Museum. So I believe we can all embrace the priority of the fundamental business of student success. As I mentioned in my report to the board earlier today, after the energy and enthusiasm of convocations, how can we not provide the infrastructure to ensure that our students get the degrees they want and the disciplines they want in a timely and economical fashion? We simply must do that. And that's the goal of our Student Success Initiative. With $8.5 million recurring in FY18 and $5 million more recurring in FY19, we will create a Student Success Center across our 5 campuses. We'll aid in undergraduate academic planning, support transfer student success, allow for 24-hour online tutoring, support peer-to-peer learning, provide enhanced study abroad and opportunities for undergraduate research and campus employment. And that investment will support improved graduation rates and thus reduce student debt, which is a key goal of all of us. We will build on our core 2025 program to enhance equity and diversity through improved admissions pipelines that reaches students as early as middle school. And we also must improve retention among our students of color. Campus-specific initiatives that respond to the local needs of Crookston, Duluth, Morris, and Rochester will fulfill our goal of having university graduates who represent the increased diversity of our state. Finally, we will promote and eliminate a backlog in STEM education on all of our campuses. The outcomes will be measurable and meaningful. We'll increase graduation and retention rates, thereby reducing student and family debt. And here's an interesting, powerful statistic, I think, for you to reflect upon. That is, for each student who goes beyond 4 years, the average borrowing increases by more than 17% in the 5th year and nearly 30% in the 6th year. So there is, to be sure, great value for students and families to graduate in 4 years or less. Plus, 4-year graduates enter the workforce sooner and fuel the economy. From all of our campuses, we'll add key talent to the state's STEM workforce, and on our Twin Cities campus alone, the incoming class of first-year students indicating an intention to major in computer science or computer engineering is up 122% over 5 years ago, more than doubled. And there's that same sort of demand on all of our campuses, such as for data science and analytics, physics, chemistry, and chemical engineering at UMD, and computer science, biology, and chemistry at Morris, and that will be addressed. And as we must, we'll increase enrollment and retention of students of color. And as we do, and as with just about all of our initiatives in this budget request, we will achieve key goals of the Minnesota dashboard, such as, for instance, and I quote, Minnesotans have the education and skills to achieve their goals. Student success and the university's excellence go hand in hand, and partnering with the state in this initiative is my first priority. The next new initiative is a building block on MnDrive, which, as I said in our work session yesterday, has been very successful. Remind you that in 2013, the legislature placed into law MnDrive, the Minnesota Discovery, Research, and Innovation Economy, and you do have to capitalize the D to make it a word. Positions our state as a leader in engineering, science, technology, and food-related solutions, matches our strength with creation and growth of key Minnesota industries, focuses on preventing and treating diseases, and tackles sustainability efforts. So MnDrive was, in some sense, the intellectual mother of our Grand Challenge emphasis, and which was a core element of our Twin Cities strategic plan, and one that will inform the system-wide strategic plan now being developed. And it's critical to continue to build on the extraordinary MnDrive foundation. MnDrive has been an undeniable success because of the areas of research and teaching we selected, and because our faculty and researchers responded to the challenge and the state's investment in remarkable ways. So far, we've leveraged the state's MnDrive investment to attract an additional $76 million in external funding around the 4 areas of MnDrive we first identified: global food, brain science, robotics, and the environment. We've invented product and processes, we've partnered with more than 225 companies, and we've published approximately 1,500 academic articles. So I believe MnDrive is a home run. With this biennial budget, we aim to build on that. We'll seek $8.5 million recurring in 18, and then an additional $15 million in 19 as we ramp up to further address the needs of the state's residents and its industries. The 4 new areas of research have been identified. We solicited ideas from researchers, consulted with faculty and academic leaders, and we believe these are important areas that align with the economy and also align with the Grand Challenge research and medical discovery team priorities. First one is improving cancer care statewide. This initiative will create a multi-site statewide clinical trial network, particular emphasis on those trials improving the health for Minnesota patients in regions throughout the state. This initiative, we believe, will attract more industry-sponsored research and move cancer treatments to the public more quickly. We have a history of groundbreaking cures and treatments, and will add to that tradition of medical breakthroughs. Cancer is the leading cause of death among Minnesotans and has been for more than a decade. I believe we all know a family member or a neighbor who's battled the disease, and we must join and redouble our efforts in the fight against it for them. The next area is intended to eliminate disparities. That's a bold goal, I know, but we can be the catalyst for closing various social, educational, and economic gaps that plague our communities. We will engage in research, education, and public policy setting to tackle inequities in education, employment, health, and the criminal justice system. Ours is a state of wide and unconscionable gaps in many areas, and those gaps affect the prosperity of our state and indeed the future of our university and the neighborhoods and communities that surround our campuses from Crookston to the Twin Cities. Through interdisciplinary work across the system, we will partner with other community organizations to tackle and hopefully move towards solution of these pressing issues. From CEHD to our Morris campus, from the Humphrey School to Extension, this is a system-wide MnDrive initiative. Units envisioned to be part of this include the Immigration History Research Center, the Institute for Child Development, the Robert J. Jones Urban Outreach and Engagement Center, and the Center for Small Towns in Morris, with many others to join. Again, this initiative will advance the state's dashboard goals, which include supporting strong and stable families and communities. I've often said that water is the oil of the 21st century, by which I mean that people will fight wars over it. We're already beginning to see water crises up close. From the Lewis and Clark Water System Project in southwest Minnesota to the disaster in Flint, Michigan, to the desert cities of our nation's west, and of course to other parts of the globe. Clean and abundant water is precious and increasingly at a premium, especially here in the land of 11,842 lakes and a robust agricultural and natural resource economy. We're poised to develop new technologies, new models for water quality and quantity monitoring, and to help communities manage water usage. From our agricultural producers to our natural resources industry, clean and abundant water is critical to Minnesota's future. In the first round of MnDrive funding, you might recall, we addressed water in terms of bioremediation. With this new investment, we'll continue to lead the way in partnering with the agricultural sector industries dependent on water, drive new technologies, inform policies, and a well-trained workforce. This will also strengthen partnerships with the state's water industry cluster, including Dow, Pentair, GE, Ecolab, and 3M. So preserving, protecting, and developing policies around clean and abundant water is a grand challenge, and it plugs into the state's dashboard of a clean, healthy environment with sustainable uses of natural resources. Final proposed initiative will take advantage of one of our greatest strengths, and that is one perhaps least known to the public, and that is our worldwide leadership in data mining, data analysis, or the so-called problems of big data. Right now, we are actually ranked 4th in the world among academic institutions in data science. And we'll build on that, moving from extraordinary to the absolute best. Realizing long ago that the amount of data being collected far exceeds what humans can analyze without assistance, computer science has invented new methods to analyze very large-scale and dynamic data sets. Our scientists do this to help explain the underlying phenomena behind the data that virtually now every industry amasses. Science to engineering to healthcare to demographics to business and higher education. So with investments from the state, for example, we can work with the state's food producers through advanced agroinformatics, contribute to precision medicine, and help prepare an emerging cohort of experts in data science that Minnesota needs in a wide range of industries. And in the end, with the same energy our faculty showed beginning in 2013, I believe the second round of MnDrive will prove as successful as the first, giving us exceptional outcomes and hundreds of partnerships while living up to the previous legislation's goals. The next component of our request is seeking a further investment in the state in our core mission of academic programs and operational excellence across the system. We request $22.6 million recurring in FY18 and an additional $23 million in FY19. At this point in the process, we are projecting annual inflationary cost increases of roughly 3% over this next biennium to deliver academic excellence, quality student services, world-class research and engagement, and maintaining technology and equipment infrastructure. This request of the state covers just a little more than half of that. It only covers 1.75% of the 3% rise we anticipate in operational cost. And we will fill that gap primarily with our own operational excellence cost reductions and internal reallocations, and by continued conversation and increase in non-resident, non-reciprocity student tuition. With this state investment and our internal adjustments, we will retain faculty and staff, maintain key programs, ensure our campus safe and reliable infrastructure, and minimize, and in fact hopefully prevent, tuition growth for Minnesota resident students. The next two items of our biennial budget request relate to proposals from previous sessions of the consequence of actions. The first seeks $6 million recurring in FY18 and then an additional $2 million recurring in FY19 to support critical health training and services to the state. As we did last session, we want to restore funding lost due to the State Department of Human Services decision not to award a contract to UCare for Medicaid and other public programs. That decision created a significant financial challenge for the university's Department of Family Medicine and Community Health and the School of Dentistry. UCare was created 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago, by the medical school to serve public program patients who need not being met by other health cost insurers at the time. UCare, though now independent of the medical school, provided approximately $9.5 million per year to the Department of Family Medicine and Community Health for research, education, and clinical training. And since 2002, UCare funded the School of Dentistry's mobile dental clinic, providing most recently $1 million in FY 2015. So this is a renewed effort to maintain and enhance access to care in Greater Minnesota and support our highly ranked family medicine program. The final element of the request is to support the state's Bell Museum, which is now under construction on our St. Paul campus, financed by the state and supported by state appropriation for debt service, also supported by philanthropy. While funding is in place to complete the physical structure of the museum, additional funds are required to fully utilize, maximize, and leverage the great new experiential learning environment. As the Bell has expanded its operations, including a 120-seat planetarium and 4 dedicated K-12 classrooms, it requires $2 million recurring beginning in FY18 and an additional $3 million recurring in FY19 to support the full mission of this spectacular new facility and, by the way, help close the state's STEM achievement gap. The funding request associated with our 2018-19 initiatives are summarized here. We've separated the three new initiatives I described from the health training, restoration, and Bell Museum items. And as you can see, in biennial math, in which I remind you, you ask for year one, and then you ask for year one again in year two, plus anything else you want in year two. The 18-19 initiative request represents a 9.8% increase over our base level funding. For reference, that amounts to a biennial math increase of $122.2 million, which is down $5 million from 2 years ago when we requested $127.2. Adding the two pieces related to prior session activities, the total request amounts to an increase of $143.2 million in biennial math, or 11.4% over our current base funding. Now, let's take a retrospective look at our state appropriation dating back to 2008 and the consequence of the Great Recession. Even if we get our full request this time around for FY18 and 19, adjusting for inflation, we're still receiving 5.6% less in funding from the state than we did a decade ago. So adjusted for inflation, we'd be $43 million less in our 18-19 request than in 2008 if, in fact, we received the entire request. And that's, I will remind you, despite the growth of our new Rochester campus, the increased cost of competitive faculty staff compensation, our grand challenges research curriculum, the improvements in student advising and student success, vastly improved graduation and retention rate, and the public engagement we're committed to in extension and research outreach, and indeed the Bell Museum. So I think it's important to keep this FY 18-19 request in that historic context. We are in fact doing more with less. In closing, let's review the request and take a look at the impact it will bring, being mindful that this request reflects our vision, ambition, commitment to the state, and devotion to land-grant mission. And you can read the outcomes: improved graduation and retention rate, more students of color, 4 new MnDrive areas of research, minimize Minnesota resident tuition, restore family medicine training, and support the Bell Museum. So here is a draft of the resolution that we will advance next month for your action. And Interim Vice President Volna, Budget Director Tonneson, and I are open to comments and questions. Please, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Volna, further comment? Okay, we have a few moments here to have discussion around the proposed biennial budget request. Thoughts, comments? Thoughts, comments?
Guess we're good to go.
Excuse me?
I don't see Regent Simmons. Regent Simmons.
If you don't see me, I'll sit closer and you'll not be happy. Aside from the fact there's not an investment in curing the common cold in this budget, I really think this is well thought out, and I like the emphasis on investing in excellence as well as taking care of our core responsibilities. It's a budget attentive to our priorities as well as our needs, and highly attentive, I think, to the needs of the state of Minnesota. So I'm really pleased to see this.
Very good. This is for review, and we will take action at our next meeting. Regent Omari.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. We also reviewed this in the Finance Committee yesterday. A couple things that I think are important and stick out is thinking about the strategic planning and how that plays into the budget process and some of the things that we're focused on. MnDrive 1 was a large success, so I think it's a good idea to push that forward. And one of the things that we also discussed yesterday around the Bell Museum is ensuring the communication flow on that front, and what it is that we're actually doing with that money.
We're going to thank you, Regent Hsu.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. I was actually going to bring up Bell Museum also because I want to make sure that we have enough operating money going forward to do a good job with the operations. And so we had a little chit chat yesterday during the Finance Committee meeting where we previewed the presentation. So is my understanding correct that by 2019 we'll be asking for and hopefully receiving $5 million a year for Bell Museum, and that will be, that will be okay as a number going forward into 2020, 2021, and do we need to, then will we need to increase it after that time?
President Kaler.
Chair Johnson, Regent Hsu, that's an excellent question. We have scrubbed that number pretty thoroughly. I am convinced that that is a reasonable and prudent operating budget for the Bell Museum going forward. Obviously, as with everything else, there will be cost inflators, and there will also be targets of opportunity or activities of opportunity that we will see. And so I would imagine periodically we will go back to the state and ask for an increase in that part of our budget. It's just really important to not lose sight of the fact that this is the state's Museum of Natural History entrusted to us, and the state has the obligation to support that museum, and we're not going to let them forget that.
Great, thank you.
Very good. Thank you for your questions. Again, we have days, weeks to make comment with the administration on their proposed budget, and we encourage you to do so. We're now going to move to the 6-year capital plan 2016 for review. Mr. Bertelsen, Mr. Molnau, Mr. President, your comment, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm now pleased to bring forward for your review my 6-year capital plan and 2017 state capital budget request. The recommended 6-year capital plan includes major capital improvements planned for FY17 to 22 to be funded with state capital support, as well as projects funded by the university through a combination of university debt obligations, local unit resources, fundraising, and public-private partnerships. Year 1 of the capital plan outlines the projects that the university will be submitting to the state of Minnesota for consideration during the upcoming 2017 legislative session. But of course, they remain from our 2016 request because the legislature didn't pass a bonding bill. In addition, Interim Vice Presidents Bertelsen and Volno will review our state capital budget request for the upcoming session. So with your permission, we'll do agenda items 12 and 13 kind of together, Mr. Chair.
Well, that is fine. And who would like to speak first? Mr. Bertelsen, please.
Mr. Chair, members, thank you. While they're pulling up the slides, I'll just start talking and they'll catch up. First reminder, we are here to talk about the 6-year capital plan, which is the planning tool that we use and set by the Board of Regents as an expectation and requirement for the administration to identify the major projects that we're intending to undertake in the coming years. Following that, the annual capital budget is the first step of the project delivery process for projects that have already achieved, completed the pre-design and resources, and have the resources in place to move ahead to design and construction. And the annual capital budget comes annually in June. With 29 million square feet of space, we manage their capital projects through a broad portfolio planning process of 4 stages. Stage 1 is a project proposals arise from either programmatic need or a facility condition situation. Colleges and major administrative units identify their needs through respective academic and business planning on an annual basis. Those are forwarded to the Capital Strategy Group, which evaluates them, authorizes feasibility studies, and recommends projects for inclusion in the 6-year capital plan. For Stage 3, at the appropriate time, projects in the 6-year plan are then advanced to begin pre-design and solicit resources, whether it's fundraising, debt, or a state capital request. Stage 4, the final stage, once projects are funded and have a completed pre-design, then we can move ahead in the annual capital budget. The 6-year capital plan assumes a continued emphasis on the 2015 priorities, so there's a great deal of momentum for prior projects. And we try to maintain that symmetry and not upset those changes or priorities or the expectations that we've been moving ahead. This maintains existing state financial assumptions about the % of the state bonding bill that the university would achieve, and it has therefore a very limited opportunity to add new projects because the state pipeline is full. Of course, with no state bonding bill this last session, this has certainly sort of backed us up in our request and moving ahead in our projects. It also has, of course, in spite of the request and university debt capacity, we have to always have the ability to pay for new operating and debt costs. And so following the biennial request, you can certainly understand the limitations of resources to address new operating costs. Objective for the 6-year plan including how to advance strategic priorities. But in addition to that, how to enhance a campus-based experience, make sure we're aligning our projects with available revenue sources, increasing our utilization and functionality of physical spaces while we complete capital investment sequences, which is important because most projects don't exist in an island. They're part of a domino that set up the next project. And finally, reduce poor and critical spaces, which leads us to this: what are the strategic emphases of this 6-year capital plan? There are 5. And we will briefly review for each one of those, the content of those, progress we've made in them, and what is new coming in the 6-year plan. This project plan puts a strong emphasis on fixing and replacing some of our worst buildings. HEAPR funds is the core of this strategy, but this plan also then proposes 3 very large investments in improving the educational and clinical research spaces of the medical school and other colleges in the Academic Health Center. The plan is a continuation of the 2013 6-year capital plan to renovate, construct, and decommission targeted labs in St. Paul. Student demand, as well as state performance measures related to STEM degrees, has increased the need for additional laboratory facilities. And finally, an emphasis on how do we reposition libraries for the 21st century. Next, a bit on each strategy. As we think about critical facilities, we know the university can't be a first-rate university with third-rate facilities. And we've made really significant progress in some targeted places, including the Tate Lab, mechanical engineering, and in Crookston in their electrical infrastructure program. An example of what happens when we don't have sufficient funds happened in Coleraine water infrastructure. This is a picture of a water break from June of 2015. We funded the design of this infrastructure in the 2014 request and had replacement of these lines in our 2016 request. In a note from the lab director in late July, the water main at Coleraine has failed again. When this occurs 2 to 4 times annually, second time this year for him, the repair costs typically run between $5,000 and $20,000 for each occurrence. So there's a real cost when the state doesn't proceed with the next HEAPR request. This is, of course, a high priority for us with the next set of resources. The board has set in your progress card a goal of reducing poor and critical spaces, and we see that we pay attention to that very closely. In this particular chart, it shows that unfortunately gross square feet in poor and critical condition has actually increased the last several years, an effort that we are trying to address in the 6-year capital plan. The next slide, you see a list of facilities that fall into that poor and critical space that are proposed to be addressed in this 6-year plan. Collectively, they total 1.5 million square feet that would be renovated, replaced, or removed, representing almost 18% of today's poor and critical space. You will note that this plan has several placeholders for critical facility projects. In recent years, the state's funding for our capital projects has stayed relatively constant. We continue to ask for more than we receive, even in the best of years, because it reflects what the university truly needs to try to address our condition. We recognize, however, that our requests are not always fully funded. To manage expectations and resources, we have left more flexibility in the years further out in the plan to accommodate projects that may slip from one year to the next. And as projects are funded, future updates in the 6-year capital plan will identify specific projects to fill these placeholders because we feel committed to delivering on the highest priorities that have been set before us. And if all of these placeholders, as well as our HEAPR requests, were fully funded, we believe we could impact another 1.5 million square feet of poor and critical space. This slide you've seen before is just a snapshot of our total square feet, replacement value, projected 10-year need, and highlighted in red the number of square feet in poor and critical space. The next priority in the 6-year plan is around health sciences. This plan plans to build on recent health sciences progress in Biodiscovery District and the St. Paul Vet Isolation and the Wilmer Poultry Lab. This plan proposes several large investments improving the educational and clinical research space for the medical school and other colleges in the Academic Health Center. Phases 1 and 2 were called out in the $10 million of funding we got from the state as part of the outcome of the 2015 session. Phase 1 will renovate, build some new and demolish outdated facilities in an integrated health sciences education center. Phase 2 is projected to be a new clinical research facility, and a proposed Phase 3 would seek modern replacement space for programs currently housed and left in Mayo. A complex of individual buildings constructed between 1920 and 1950 well past their useful life. The goal of the sequence is to make significant progress toward the university's goal of decommissioning the Mayo building and advancing the quality and capability of health sciences programs in education, research, and clinical care. Improving facilities is just one of the ways to impact the Regents' goal in your progress card for the medical school. Listed here, of course, are the major projects which we have referred to already in the 6-year capital plan, the 3 phases, plus, in addition to that, identification of work toward a future joint venture project and investments in targeted medical school discovery teams. Moving on to St. Paul, the university has a strategic emphasis on improving our St. Paul campus research lab since 2013. Lots of discussion about the future of the St. Paul campus has occurred and continues to occur, but the research mission for life sciences has always been clear and a consistent theme. The Bell Museum, while not a laboratory, reflects the life sciences theme as well. The state provided funding to upgrade facilities and equipment for the Aquatic Invasive Species Lab and the Bee Research Lab in 2014. Funding to replace the vet isolation facility was approved in the 2015 session. Coming forward in the coming six-year plan, the university again is requesting funds in 2017 for the obsolete biological sciences greenhouse, and the academic student experience projects has funding for 2 floors of the biosciences tower. We're currently working with the deans of CFAN, CBS, and VetMed on the next major investment for 2018 and 19 for the St. Paul lab investment. Discussions with new leadership in 2 of the colleges about new versus renovation, the best mix of the programmatic needs in order to how to drive forward the outcomes. Additional requests to renovate and replace laboratories in St. Paul are included in 2020. Each project will depend on first investment, but a likely candidate is the remainder of the biological sciences tower. STEM, we are continuing our decades-long sequence of improvements in our STEM programs. We've replaced the old science classroom building with Brunix Hall. We constructed Physics Nano and are renovating Tate for Earth Sciences now. Along the way, we addressed Amundsen Hall and part of Lind with generous donations and HEAPR investments. Mechanical engineering, one of the worst buildings from a building code and condition assessment, was resolved with HEAPR and an engines lab relocation. And when Pillsbury is complete with English and other programs relocated, we'll have the opportunity to address the remainder of Lind in the final component of that domino. And for the STEM programs, the importance of that progress is been set out in statute in specific languages, which is listed here. Specific projects identified for STEM are identified here. Improvements are certainly not restricted to the Twin Cities campus. The Chemistry and Advanced Material Sciences in Duluth is a significant investment and significant progress and continues the UMD trend with on top of Swenson Science and the Civil Engineering's building in recent past, as well as smaller improvements in the academic and student experience at Crookston. Now, Provost Hanson will talk to you about the direction of libraries.
Thank you, Mr. Bertelsen. Provost Hanson.
Thank you, Chair Johnson and members of the board. Our libraries play a special role within the university and indeed for the whole state. They organize, conserve, and disseminate knowledge and the tools and materials for learning and for future contributions to knowledge. They work in new ways, and everybody is familiar with the digital revolution, but there are some continuing things that we do that make renovation here necessary. We do play a special role in the state, primarily through Minitex, which allows equitable access to information resources. It's worth knowing that last year there were 350,000 requests to the library through Minitex, and most of those were responded to within 24 hours for books or for scanned materials. They play a role in providing materials throughout the state for all Minnesotans, in rural schools, in homeschoolers, for small businesses. But there are changes in the ways in which the libraries provide information. As you know, the space collections the collections that we have take up a lot of space, but it's not as if we can just get rid of them. I mean, we need to conserve those. That's part of the role of our libraries. And we have a variety of collections, not just books, but as we used to say, bugs and, I don't know, medical devices, rocks, all kinds of things. And it's important that the university maintain those. So what we're suggesting here is the repurposing of two buildings. One, the Murphy Warehouse, and secondly, the Wilson Library, to make that more student-centric for the way in which most of our students use the libraries on campus, using mostly digital materials. But again, with the Murphy Warehouse, conserving the primary sources and the collections. And in addition, the second request has to do with the Morris Briggs Library. As Mike mentioned earlier, that's a long-standing high priority because that's in poor and critical condition.
Very good.
Mr. Chair, remembers that that's the projects. In addition to that, in your material is projects under consideration. This project is a list of, represents valid programmatic and facility condition needs of the institution that aren't sufficiently developed at this time in their completion of their programmatic goals or their financial capacity to advance at this time. But that represents a list of projects as sort of the next tier of priorities for us for your consideration. Mr. Volno will now talk about the finances, how to pay for it.
Mr. Volno.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, the recommended 6-year capital improvement plan represents an investment of $1,608,100,000 over that period of time. As currently constructed, we would anticipate $359 million, or 22%, would represent university funding, and $1,249,000, or the remainder, 77%, would represent a state contribution to that investment.
Very good.
So now we'll just, we have a very short story about the 2017 state capital request, because this is your 2016 capital request with one small addition that we've added a request for the design of the collections and contemporary learning funds. The rest of the project, to actually complete that project, would be in the 2018 capital request. The only difference in the dollar amounts is that we have increased the cost for 1 year's worth of construction inflation. And so you can see those numbers on this slide. And with that, Mr. Chair, members, we end our presentation and are prepared for any questions.
Thank you very much, members. We have before us the 2016 and 17 state capital budget request. For review, your comments and thoughts. Regent Hsu.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. Thank you, presenters. I have 3 questions. One is the $10 million from the 2015 session, has that been spent already? That's number one. Number 2 is, do we know or have we decided where the health sciences education building is going to go? And number 3, I sat at the science table last night at the Regents with the Regents professors, and I was told that we have over 130 majors that require chemistry now. And I remember how hard chemistry was to get into when I was a freshman. And it's still a problem. And I'm wondering, I saw the 2018 slide there was a slide that said 2018 had a chemistry building. And I assume that's for the Twin Cities, and I was wondering if you could tell me more about that.
Regent Hsu, clarification. Your first point reference was, has the $10 million been spent? What project?
I don't know what project. It was $10 million for health sciences design or something like that.
Mr. Bertelsen.
Mr. Chair and members, Mr. Regent Hsu, the $10 million was appropriation that was to help begin the design and preparation for the health sciences education and the clinical sciences building. And so we have advanced those. How much of it is spent? I'm going to ask AVP Smith to come answer that question, because she will know.
Vice President Smith.
Chair Johnson, Regent Shu, Regents. I don't have the exact figure, but what I can tell you is that the contract for design has been awarded and design is underway. Relative to the clinical research facility, the plan is to use about $1.5 million of the $10 million to initiate the feasibility study, of which the RFP is currently being written.
Thank you.
As to the other questions, the Health Sciences Education Facility does have an identified location. It's on the current site of Masonic and VFW and would be built into the connect to PWB. So it'll be an integrated, there's parts of the facility, there's a component that's a renovation of PWB, but the majority of the building would be new on the site of Masonic and VFW, and we're working actively to identify sites for where all those people will go. Many of them already have left those buildings and moved into the CSC building. That leaves there, but there are some pieces still left, and we're working on where to put those, including some of the spaces vacated in PWB that aren't going to be part of health sciences education. To the third part of your question, as to chemistry, yes, 18, that is a Twin Cities chemistry building. So there's really two, envision plant domino as two things. First, build a chemistry lab building for education. Then space that would be vacated and empty from students moving out of Smith would be available to do the second phase of that, which is do an investment for chemistry research. So it's seen as a two-stage domino investment in chemistry.
One follow-up.
Regent Shu.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. Mr. Bertelson, so the health science education building, is that land or the development site, is that being chosen because it's convenient, or is that actually like the best location to put that building?
Mr. Bertelson?
Mr. Chair and Regents, there was a great deal of discussion about opportunities and places in the end with consultation with and a lot of evaluation with health sciences academic leadership. It's felt that that is the best location. Otherwise, I think, building not on top of other buildings may have been more convenient not to have to move other things out of the way first. It was integration of where and wanting it connected close to where students are for other components and where the faculty and staff can easily be kind of in two places, because obviously the faculty have multiple roles, their clinical care and as well as the educational side and their research. So it's difficult to find the perfect spot for all those things, but really wanted the student education piece as close into that part of the campus as possible. So I think it was felt as that was a good location.
Regent Anderson.
Thank you.
I have thank you, Chair Johnson, just a follow up on that kind of piqued my attention. In our $104 million total, do we have demolition costs included in there? If that's
Mr. Chair, Regent Anderson, yes.
Okay. That was my question.
Regent Broad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think I'm a broken record on HEAPR, but shiny new buildings get all the glory. But, it seems to me that we've got to get creative around that relationship that we have with the state. I've said it at committee. I've said it over and over again. And I'd like to, know whether we're brainstorming some creative ways to maybe recalibrate that R&R relationship that we have with the state. HEAPR clearly does not inspire, and so I think we've got to come up with a new approach. As I sit here, I just literally was trying to brainstorm. I'm like, well, could we do 1% cost on new buildings to create a pool? Is that one option? Could we get the state to put together a big chunk of money 1 year over 10 years for a trust fund where higher ed can come in and grab HEAPR or R&R dollars to CPR our buildings? Could we put together a depreciation budget? What are those things that we're evaluating as a board, that might change that relationship with the state? And those are just three from me, and there's a lot of people that are a lot smarter and a lot more knowledgeable about what that would look like. But I'd really like to see us try to evaluate that. I think we nibbled around the edges a few years ago at trying to change that, but I'm not sure we went all in on it. And I think if we did this in conjunction with our other higher ed partners in the state, it might bring a bigger bang for our buck. So I just want to tee that up as a challenge to us and potentially as a challenge to you and your creative thinking relative to how we recalibrate the R&R relationship with the state.
Thank you, President Kaler.
Thank you, Chair Johnson, Regent Broad. Those are excellent points, and I will recall that 3 or 4 years ago, we did go to the state with the idea that we would taper our HEPA requests on bonding years down as we tapered up a direct state appropriation for R&R. That politically went exactly nowhere. Which means we didn't do a good job of educating people about the need. We can do that again. You know, in a real sense, the university's built infrastructure is its second endowment. It is an investment made that we use. And right now we're consuming that endowment because we're not able to keep up with the costs of maintenance. That's informed discussions about the fact we need to take down spaces whenever we can. A depreciation budget is unusual in higher education, mainly because we don't have enough money to do the things we need to do, and putting some away is hard. But you know, we do have I think a chance to change the political conversation around getting something in our operating budget, and we'll continue to visit that issue.
Thank you, Regent Devine.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, thank you for a wonderful presentation, much transparency here in terms of what it is, and I know the amount of level and work that went through this and your presentation yesterday for the committee. Let me just say, I was going to mention what Regent Broad was just talking about relative to the HEPA approach. I know that there are some senior legislators that have talked, you know, in the past about trying to come up with a three-prong approach for both the University of Minnesota, MnSCU, which is now Minnesota State, and then the state's own buildings, and trying to get that a little less politically charged and a little less directed politically in terms of how the monies get spread upon Minnesota State institutions. And I think that after the election cycle, I think we should revisit it with some degree of aggressiveness on how we might recast or reapproach this methodology. And not to repeat what Regent Broad said, but I think there's a willingness to at least listen to a new approach. And I think that any work that we do to frame that discussion or take leadership in that with the other two components, because the state has struggled in the same way in terms of what their state buildings are right now, as has what's gone on with Minnesota State. The second thing I just want to quickly say is, Provost, I'm all in on your issues of the collections and the protection and the role and responsibilities we have. I know that in my visits to Glen Sheen here this last year, you know, we got very valuable collections, and as part of our outreach, we do have the responsibility to hold these assets that belong to the University of Minnesota, but that really belong to the people of Minnesota over and beyond. And the fact that we're starting to view that and spending what I think is a relatively small amount of money, and we've targeted though, and it's on our list, brings presence to it, and hopefully will frame out the story. And then finally, my last comment relates to the health sciences. I think I'm happy that we're moving ahead. It's obviously a high priority for us. The fact that the governor was so visible in all of his discussions this summer has been very, very important. The one feedback item that I would share is, you know, from political people is, are we clear enough in explaining what we're going to have when we get all done? And the goals and the visioning, the mHealth thing, even though it's sitting out here on the side right now, we still have the responsibilities and the visioning of what we need to do. And I think the more that we get that vision articulated into paper format or electronic format that can be conveyed to legislators about what we're going to end up with, the same, you know, what's our result at the end. Our dear friends at the Mayo have really done that with the destination medical framework, and I think that there's something to be learned about how they approach the state and got that $583 million commitment. And I think that part of it is the educational process that we've got, the challenges that we have in educating. So whether that's HEPA or whatever else, our government affairs unit's going to be busy this fall and this session. And remembering we have a double session this year in terms of both a bonding year and an appropriation year for us. So anyway, I just make those quick comments. Thank you.
Our last two comments on the capital plan will be from Regent Rocha and then Omari. Regent Rocha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When we were talking earlier about the budget, actually it was yesterday, I talked about we don't really have a crisis in quality. We have amazing quality in what we offer to our students, but we do have a potential developing crisis in access because of cost. When I look at facilities, we certainly don't have a crisis in inventory. We have a lot of buildings, but we have a crisis in maintenance cost and quality in some locations. And so, building off of what Regent Broad was saying, I can't help you with the smarter or better informed part of what you were looking for, but talking aspirationally about how to communicate with the legislature, I think that's really important, because one of the things that you hear when you talk to legislators is, warranted or not, and I think generally not, but sometimes you have to at least follow the inquiry, is they don't necessarily perceive our expenditures as being really well managed, that we pay a lot for stuff and more than they think we should have to pay for it, and that's something that I think we have to bear in mind in always making the case that that's not true. But I noticed in one of the earlier slides, Vice President Bertelsen, you had a bullet on reduce poor facilities. I missed it was reduce something poor facilities, but it was the bottom bullet. I want to throw something out there for us as we go aspirationally going forward, and I think, President Kaler, this would actually have a pretty profound effect on what I see as the legislative attitude, is going to, and for those of you who've been around a long time, you'd recall, I think we should look at an access to excellence approach to our facilities, meaning that we maybe not have quite as many facilities, but the ones that we have are all excellent. And that if we actually move that, reducing the poor quality facilities that are draining the capacity to maintain and improve the facilities that are really fundamental to our mission, I think that would be very well received at the legislature. And so, put your guide on in the ground and say, okay, this is now an actual strategic development. And I do recognize this stuff is going on every day. I don't want to make it sound like I just invented the wheel here, because I clearly haven't. But I think that from a messaging standpoint, to actually make it an articulated and packaged approach, saying that we at the University of Minnesota are committed to taking this look at this development that's occurred in the last couple of decades and really identify the most important facilities, and dedicated to removing facilities that simply aren't meeting that, and then using the technology, and Vice President Bertelsen, you and I have talked about, the fact that you've got some very good processes for trying to improve the efficiency of the use, which would then allow you to take some buildings offline. But I would love to see it have a name and have a real directed approach to make it clear to the stakeholders, especially the legislature, that we are going to use these dollars very, very well, and in the process improve what we're able to provide to our faculty and students and staff.
Regent Omari.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. Thank you for the presentation. Still excited to see Pillsbury up there. Happy that's still on the list. Provost, could you talk a bit about the shift in the library? So are we re-envisioning and responding to an online presence where things are going digital and moving our hard copy supply, or are we still going to have the opportunity to jump on and do a request for a book? Like I used to have my stack of 15 at home. And then the trends between professional, graduate, and undergrad, are they similar? Are they different?
Provost?
Yeah, Chair Johnson, Regent Omari, and Regents. It isn't an either-or thing. We have a responsibility to maintain the collections of various sorts, and it's a responsibility that extends beyond the university to the whole state. But as you, of course, know, students are often accessing materials differently, and it's at both the graduate and undergraduate level, but they need different spaces for studying. They expect different spaces for studying. And if anyone goes to Wilson Library now, they'll see how overcrowded it is with students trying to make the spaces they need to do the work in the way in which we expect them to do now. Collaboratively, accessing materials quickly online. Graduate students may have some of those same needs and then some other ones that are connected with their doing original research. So it isn't an either-or thing, and it's one of the reasons why we need to renovate the Murphy Warehouse, to put collections there so that they're accessible. And again, we are constantly providing those things to people throughout the state. And and yet use some of our core campus spaces in a way that best fits the way education and research proceed these days.
Thank you very much, Regent Simmons.
Thank you. 2 quick points. One is, though, I think there's a lesson in how the community of Rochester and Mayo approach the Destination Medical Center project. I'd remind us that the amount of public investment is about $400 million over 20 years, much of which comes from local Rochester area taxes. The big money is investment, is private investment, of which Mayo will be the biggest investor, and none of that goes to Mayo. So we can be a little careful what we want the outcome to be. The approach may be good, but we're not looking for lobbying to get money that doesn't come to the university either. The second point I want to make is investments in the academic health center, of course, are very important to us, a high priority for this institution and the board. Given that we're going to enter into some strategic planning, it seems to me an awfully good time to develop, for at least me, for the Regents, a good understanding of what the future looks like in facilities needs for the medical school. What are they? Where do they need to be? Because that needs some serious consideration with respect to long-term planning, and I think our strategic planning effort ought to influence that.
Very good. Thank you, presenters. We now turn to committee reports. Report of Academic and Student Affairs, Regent Cohen.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. The committee recommends adoption of amendments to the Board of Regents policy, animal use and care. I move adoption of the policy.
Been moved. Is there a second? Discussion on the policy. Discussion on the policy. If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion prevails. Regent Cohen.
The committee recommends approval of the consent report, which includes program additions, changes, and discontinuations. I move adoption of the consent report.
Been moved.
Second.
Seconded. Discussion on the motion. Discussion on the motion. If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion prevails. Regent Cohen.
There were 2 discussion items, very thought-provoking topics. First, in our discussion on the annual report on changes to undergraduate, graduate, and professional academic programs, we heard from Vice Chancellor Kynett from the Crookston campus about the process to bring 2 programs to approval last year, the Bachelor of Science in English and the Bachelor of Science in Agricultural Education. These 2 programs truly fit the mission of the Crookston campus to deliver applied and career-focused degrees. As part of the consent report today, we approved another exciting program from Crookston, the Early Childhood Education and Elementary Education degrees will now be delivered on the campus of the White Earth Tribal Community College. We also heard from Associate Dean Dillon from the College of Education and Human Development on the Twin Cities campus, who shared an example of how program changes may come about as a result of community need. CEHD offers a Master of Education degree specifically for Minneapolis Public School teacher aides called the Minneapolis Residency Program. Candidates in this program have an intense summer session, year-long co-teaching residency in Minneapolis schools. After a second summer session and completion of licensure, they're eligible to be hired by the district in grades K through 6. Both presenters shared the rigorous proposal and review process that is undertaken in advance of approval by the board, and I can assure you that it is thorough. The second discussion item on the topic of developing and preparing students through a liberal education, we heard from Dean Coleman of the College of Liberal Arts and Professor Leopold of the Department of Chemistry, who also serves as the chair for the Council on Liberal Education. I think we were all ready to sign up for his chemistry course. The presenters highlighted the value of a liberal education, taking students beyond specific coursework and preparing them with the skills that not only make them good employees, but also good citizens. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Regent Cohen. Regent Broad, on behalf of the Audit Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The committee had no action items this month and 4 discussion items. We had a very full agenda. The committee received an update on internal audits performed by the Office of Internal Audit since June of 2016. 39% of the audit recommendations that were raised that were rated as essential were implemented, which is just shy of the 40% expected rate. Associate Vice President Klatt also reported that audits of the 3 significant business processes, vendor payments, purchasing cards, and PCI compliance, have all had outstanding results. And this is important because they're critical functions across the entire university. The committee also heard an update from Interim VP and CFO Volna and Athletic Director Coyle on the remediation of intercollegiate athletics audit findings. Mr. Volna chairs a financial oversight committee whose purpose it is to ensure that athletic policies are aligned with university financial policies and that athletics works closely with the central university finance professionals. Mr. Coyle stated that his goal is to create a culture of being intentional and consistent across all levels of athletics and to have a clearly defined and department-wide expectations. And as I mentioned earlier, we were pleased with the progress and the update, and will continue providing the oversight as we go forward. We requested that Mr. Volna and Mr. Coyle produce a scorecard similar to what Vice President Herman has produced for the committee to measure their ongoing progress and monitoring. Vice President Herman updated the committee on the Human Participant Research Protection Plan Implementation Project, which remains on our schedule continually. Most notably, since we had our last update in June, the IRB has put new policies into place that address the concern of capacity to consent, protecting the most vulnerable participants. And 8 new biomedical review panels have also been created by the IRB. Dr. Strauss, who served as an external consultant on this matter, also provided a status report to the committee. He noted that he is pleased with how the university has taken the recommendations and carried them forward with enthusiasm. The committee agreed to invite the chair of the psychiatry department to a future meeting to discuss that progress and that roadmap for the future. Our challenges and area of oversight focus will be on monitoring outcomes as we go forward in terms of the audit committee role. The review of the audit committee lastly discussed in the process for the external audit contract, RFP, for securing a new external audit contract. Interim VP and CFO Volna and Interim Controller Paulson outlined the scope, criteria, and the timeline around that contract. The RFP will be issued later this month with responses expected in October, which is a very tight timeline. The committee will remain actively engaged in this process until the final approval is made at our February meeting. And Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Regent Broad. On behalf of the Facilities Planning Operations Committee, Regent McMillan.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. The one item of action we've already addressed, the Pioneer Hall and Consolidated Superblock Dining Facility, so I don't need to discuss that again. We had 4 discussion items, the first of which we also just covered in the 2016 6-year capital plan and the 2017 state capital request. So we needn't talk about those anymore. We had 2 real estate transactions of importance, the first being the Matheson elevator or concrete elevator property acquisition, which sits adjacent to the electric steel elevators, and the proposal there is a purchase price of $1.3 million. Closing on or before October 31st. The second item was the sale of and development of property in the northeast corner of Umore Park to Opus Development Company for an industrial commercial development out there that is consistent with prior board action in with regard to Umore Park. Both those items will return to the committee for action in October. Our third topic was the review of a proposed resolution for action in October, again with regard to demolition of the electric steel elevator properties, and that then connects with our fourth item. We discussed in some depth the adaptive reuse study that the university has done, and that it identified no alternatives consistent with the university's needs, mission, or our operational model there. We talked about historic mitigation measures, archival documentation, and property salvage, and then donation of historical artifacts from those elevators before demolition. And that'll come before the board in October. And it then relates to our last discussion, which will also be up for action in October, and that was a capital budget amendment relative to the track and field facility and the rec sports bubble relocation. And the administration's identified an opportunity now to put a new competition level track and field facility for intercollegiate athletics at the Athletes Village site on the East Bank. Once that is done, it will displace and require movement of the current rec sports bubble. The proposed location for the rec sports bubble is where the electric steel elevators are. So all this fits together. The price tag with those is significant. The track and field is total project cost of $13 million. The rec sports bubble move is $6 million, and those will be back before the committee in October. The track and field creates a 9-lane track with opportunities for all the accompanying javelin, shot put, discus, hammer throw, steeplechase, lots of different things there, in a 4,000 seat capacity stadium. So that will be back before the committee. Several information items, but not action items. That completes my report.
Thank you, Regent McMillan. On behalf of Faculty Staff Affairs, Regent Simmons.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. Regents, for your action, the committee unanimously recommends approval of the consent report, which includes the appointment of Douglas Peterson as general counsel and conferral of tenure for 3 outside hires to the faculty. I move approval.
Been moved and seconded. Questions, comments on the motion? Questions, comments on the motion? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevailed. Regent Simmons.
Thank you. Our next topic was principles as well as strategy with respect to compensation. We received an overview and discussed the university's strategy and compensation planning, as well as the Board of Regents principles. Salary and fringe benefits account for 61% of the university's non-sponsored spending. Compensation is our largest investment in mission and quality, so important that we attend to it. HR's long-term strategy involves moving forward from budget-based compensation to a model more responsive to the market. With the completion of the job family study, we're now able to identify an appropriate market for each job family to benchmark, which will help ensure the university remains a competitive employer in its markets. We also discussed the total employee compensation packages, and specifically the objectives and the balance of salary and benefits in recruitment and retention. A final discussion item was that of employee engagement. We received an update on employee engagement and had quite a conversation about the university's progress card metric on engagement. The measure tracks the percentage of employees, faculty, and staff who complete the survey. The current goal is to reach 72% participation by 2021. We deliberated about that goal and proposed that ultimately participation in the survey is not our endpoint, and we agreed to continue the conversation about including a metric in the future that would reflect actual employee engagement, not just survey completion. That concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Regent Simmons. And on behalf of the Finance Committee, Regent Beeson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Finance Committee met. First 3 action items this month were first, the Board of Regents policy investment of reserves. The committee voted unanimously to recommend adoption of proposed amendments to the Board of Regents policy investments of reserves. The proposed changes would allow for limited exposure to liquid investments managed exclusively by external investment managers. This change would provide the opportunity for the university's operating pool portfolio to capitalize on certain attractive investment opportunities currently available in higher yielding fixed income investments, namely bank senior notes. Proposed changes to Section 2 would include adding private or illiquid securities as an allowable investment for external managers. Second, adding the private or illiquid securities category along with the consolidated investment fund as part of the cumulative portion of the operating pool that is subject to the 30% maximum allocation at time of investment that is already in policy. And I would move adoption of those two proposed amendments.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Second. Discussion. Discussion of the motion. If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion prevailed. Regent Beeson.
Next resolution related to a distribution of funds from the sale of Salt Springs lands in St. Louis County. The committee voted unanimously to recommend adoption of the resolution related to the distribution of those proceeds. The resolution directs the proceeds for the sale of 217 acres of Salt Springs land in Bearhead State Park to be used for a new Salt Lake Fund endowment. The board approved the sale of the land back in this past June. The endowment will be separate and distinct from the existing fund. The income distributions from the new fund will be directed entirely to the Morris campus and the American Indian Studies program. This will maximize the impact of potential annual funding from the university's Salt Lake funds and support the unique history of the Morris campus in serving American Indian students and curriculum focused on the historic and contemporary cultures and needs of American Indian peoples. I do move adoption of that resolution.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Moved and second. Discussion on the motion. Discussion on the motion before us. If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion prevailed. Regent Beeson.
Next, the committee voted unanimously to recommend approval of the consent report, which includes purchase of goods and services over $1 million and 2 revisions to the general contingency reports. I move adoption of that consent report.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Second. Moved and second. Discussion on the motion. Discussion on the motion. If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion prevailed. Regent Beeson.
Mr. Chair, we had some discussion items in addition to reviewing the 18-19 biennial budget request, the 2016 six-year annual capital plan, and the 2017 state capital request. The committee took up 2 additional discussion items. First, the annual asset management report, which we received from Associate Vice President and Chief Investment Officer Stuart Mason. As of June 30th this year, the invested assets of the university total approximately $2.56 billion. That's in addition to the endowment of the foundation. While the 1-year investment return for the consolidated endowment fund was 0.3%, early indications show that is a strong performance compared to our peers. The slight underperformance was driven largely by portfolio overweight to public equity investments and underperformance by riskier fixed income managers. And finally, informational items will receive 3 reports: a quarterly purchasing report, the investment advisory committee update, and the debt management advisory committee update. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Regent Beeson. On behalf of Governance and Policy Committee, Regent Cohen.
The committee did not meet.
On behalf of Litigation Review, Regent Devine.
The committee did not meet.
Is there any old business to come before the board this day? Any old business? If not, is there any new business? Any new business? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Is there a second? Second. It's been moved and second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevailed. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.